morning, SMITE fans, and welcome back to the final day of the SWC Group Stage Qualifiers. I'm JMax Inbound, joining me here on the desk. We have two more teams to send to the SMITE World Championships, and we're going to find those out with our final two sets of the week. Both of them best of fives, and both of them an SPL versus SCC matchup to see who is going to be the final two teams to slot their way to the World Championships. If you missed out on this weekend, you're wondering how everything broke down, we started out on Thursday and Friday with all best of threes for our first matchups and our elimination games where we sent our first two teams home by end of day Friday. And then yesterday we started out on our best of five qualifier matchups, and that's what today will be as well. Winner of these two matches go to the World Championships. Loser of these two, their season is done and over with right here and right now. And again, it's going to be the SCC, the Amateur League teams, versus our Pro League teams here of the SPL for both of these matchups, trying to get to that SMITE World Championships. And then the four teams that have qualified from here at the end of the day today will have the teams that have already made it to the SWC via our playoffs from the SPL all the way back in November. They'll get to decide in a draft style of what teams that they want to have as their opponents for the quarterfinals of the SWC. So even when the matches are over, you want to stick around because we'll get to see what our quarterfinal matchups are going to be at the end of the day today.
Yeah, I mean, just getting to see kind of what the quarterfinals are going to look like, see the last few teams qualified is going to be very exciting. And we have the best of fives, like you said, which started yesterday. They were very good. It's interesting to see how the SPL and the SEC teams, you know, the meta evolves, how the teams change up. So, again, it's going to be a great week end, I guess I should say, the end of the week.
Yeah, a great end to our weekend.
That's how I meant
over
to say
anything
it.
else here. We can take a look, though, at the brackets to see everything that has shaken down so far this weekend. You can see over in Group B, we've already determined one of our two teams from the group that have qualified to Worlds. That's the Solar Scarabs. They found a win over the Callan Wardens yesterday in a 3-1 win and a 2-0 to start their week over the Camelot Kings. That put the Kings down on the lower end of the bracket, who had to face off against the Eldritch Hounds, got put down by the Callan Wardens at the start of the week. Camelot Kings came out on top over the Hounds to be a 2-1, and that will lead us to our final match of today will be that Callan Wardens and Camelot Kings match, best of five, to see which of those two teams makes it to the World Championships alongside the Solar Scarabs for Group B. But over in Group A, it's a similar level of story, except the fact that the SPL is doing maybe a little bit more winning over for Group A over anything else there. But I think after watching the matchup yesterday, there was a lot of talk saying, you know, how is the Callan Wardens going to do? How's Solar Scarabs going to do when they have to face the Camelot Kings? I think that we have a very good matchup to round out the end of our weekend. But we've also got a pretty important matchup here over in Group A. Highland Ravens have already qualified their way to the SWC, a 2-0 over the Storm and a 3-1 over Hex Mambo, who had defeated the Gilded Gladiators to start this week out, and the Gilded Gladiators able to take down Shabalba Storm 2-0 just the other day as well. And now we have a rematch, Hex Mambo versus Gilded Gladiators once more. And as you can see, Hex Mambo got the better end at the start of the week. Now it's time to see how much the Gilded Gladiators have learned through their loss against Hex Mambo, through their victory against Shabalba Storm, and how much Hex Mambo have been able to pull back from what they learned in their matchup against the Highland Ravens to see which of these two teams will be the third team to now make it to the World Championships.
And the Glads got to watch 4 games yesterday from the Mambo because of that 4-game set, Mambo versus the Ravens. So has their game kind of changed? Has their meta, their idea kind of changed? What are they going to end up drafting, prioing, stuff like that? There was also a few interesting things yesterday, like the Mammon wasn't picked or banned in a few of the games. So kind of where's everything's going to shape up? It's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, I think it was very interesting seeing kind of how some of the jungle meta had changed up a little bit, you know, with some of the priority. Even at points, I think we had a moment where, like, Aphrodite wasn't even being looked at by some of the teams, which was absolutely crazy to see. So we'll kind of have to see how some of the meta now develops with anything over here. And the Gladiators are a team that have kind of been sticking mostly to the norm. We don't really see the Gladiators kind of branch out beyond kind of what is that established style of meta. But a lot of it is dictated by the pacing of Kyrmi over in the jungle. When Kyrmi is having a pop-off game, you can really feel it through the rest of the team. And now that they have a little bit of extra carry potential coming out of Jangaru into the mid lane, has really been able to kind of help Kyrmi out a little bit. But still need to see just a little bit more from some of the side lanes. I feel that even after jumping over to Lancon, hasn't had the standout performance that we've come to know and expect from him. I think that Snoopy has made some strong plays, but still need to see just a little bit more out of him as well. And then Jake on this Charon. He's sticking to Charon, and if he's going to stick to Charon, he's the only player that's really made it work so far, so I can't complain too much, but there might come a time where we might need to see Jake branch away from that support.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the interesting thing. Will we keep seeing this Charon from Jake? Because, as you said, most teams aren't finding success with this, so it's just really Jake. Is he going to be going more towards that Sobek, the Aphrodite, as you highlighted? And then something that we really haven't talked about because she's just not been picked is that Yemoja, something that's really dominated SPL for a while now, hasn't seen any play this tournament. So where's Jake kind of going to go? We've seen Snoopy in that dual lane kind of stick with that Chernobog also. He seems to still like it a lot even after the nerfs. And yesterday, 2 days ago, their set versus the Xibalba Storm, I really liked him on this Chernobog. I think he was making a lot of plays around the map. Laning phase, nothing special. You don't need to do anything laning phase with this Chernobog. But when it came to those late games, those rotations, he was really making work.
And I think that's the thing that we're starting to notice now with the trend of Chernobog. Well, it's not the go-to pick anymore. It's still one that players can make work. It's one that you don't have to necessarily entirely depend on that global presence necessarily anymore as far as the late game goes, but getting some of those earlier rotations over, maybe if the Athena is left open, you get an Athena Chernobog, all of a sudden you're turning, a 1v1 into an immediate 3v1 with both those two jumping over there. So curious to see how things can shake out. Maybe we can hear it from the man himself, Snoopy, standing by the Gormize for our pregame interview.
That's right. I've got Snoopy here, and as I'm sure you already know, this is a pretty heavy set, right? You win, you go to Worlds, lose, and the season's done. So I'm just kind of curious, what kind of prep do you put into a set like this when it has such heavy implications?
Well, you really got to go over the games, and like we were prepping for a while yesterday, and you just got to see what you think you can do better than them and capitalize on that. And I think we have a pretty good game plan going into this best of 5.
The Hex Mambo that you're playing up against yesterday looked good in game 1 against the Ravens, but end up falling. What are your thoughts on them as an opponent, especially after facing them earlier this week?
Yeah, I mean, we faced them earlier this week. We lost, but I think we learned a lot from that. And being able to see them in another best of 5 against the Ravens, I think helped out a lot. And I think that's going to really, really help going into this.
And the biggest one, you win today, you go to Worlds. What would that mean to you?
I mean, it would mean a lot. Like, Worlds is the place to be. Like, I would love to go to Worlds and compete at the highest standard I can possibly do at. And to see everybody there in person would be awesome.
I know you got a lot of people out there rooting for you, so good luck in your games, man. Thanks for your time, and we'll go back to the desk.
I think that's what everybody's really shooting for right now, especially in this event, is being able to compete at Worlds is a whole different story than just, getting to go to Worlds. That's cool, and that's great and everything, but being able to compete on that stage, especially if you haven't been there in some time, really means a lot to these players out here. And I know probably one person more than anybody sitting on this screen right now has got to be Kyrmi. He was so disappointed last year not being able to make it to the world stage. Talked to him just earlier this year. It was kind of towards the very end of the phase. Said, man, what would it mean for you to go to Worlds? He says, it'd mean everything. I missed the chance last year. I didn't get an opportunity to go to Worlds. So being able to make it this year would mean everything to him. So let's see. Even bring the Spirit of the Valkyries with him. That's a throwback jersey for Kyrmi, but up against them, the team that knocked them down to this position is Hex Mambo. It was a difficult fight for the Gilded Gladiators to start this week out, and now they've got to go against them one more time, this time in a best-of-5 scenario. And again, we talked about how this sometimes can benefit towards the SPL teams a little bit more. They've got more practice in these best-of-5s. Once you get, all you need really is one game against the opposition to at least try and guarantee to get to that 4th spot. But Hex Mambo haven't been looking the cleanest this tournament compared to what we would have thought. Coming into this one, this was the team. These were the guys to beat no matter what. You go up against Hex Mambo, you're saying, man, I got to fight Johnny. I got to fight Julio. What am I going to do against these guys? But we're starting to see a little bit of bleeding from this team. These guys aren't the unkillable monsters that we had seen during their SCC stint this past phase, even really during the qualifiers. And I think some of it has come down to really being able to slow down Johnny and not really allow Hex Mambo to play their game style.
Yeah, I think specifically yesterday stuck out for me with the Mambo with how they looked way better, their set against the Gladiators. That they were playing their style, they were getting those early leads and really, not really winning early game, but they were just dominating those mid and late game team fights. And then yesterday was almost a flip. The Mambo didn't look like the better team fighting team versus that Ravens team. The Ravens were out team fighting, which is not something you really expect to say when it comes to the Mambo. And I think if they can kind of look at their sets yesterday, because I think their P's and B's are great. I think what they ended up prioing was fine. I just think it came down to gameplay in a couple of those games was really the issue. And even during that, they still were able to take a game away from this Ravens team, which, for my money, was the best team in this tournament. They played pretty flawless, SMITE, really looked strong, and the Mambo were still able to take a game from them. If they can just, use that one game, the one game that they won, and then a couple of the other points from those other games, and put them into play here, I think they've got a good chance.
Well, we got a chance just a moment ago to talk to Snoopy, who's the ADC for the Gilded Gladiators. It would be right if we got to talk to his direct lane opponent. It's Spudio from Hex Mambo here with Gormeister for the interview.
That's right. I've got Spudio here. The first thing I want to say, yesterday we talked to Julio, and I asked him what kind of prep that you would put into a set against the Ravens, and he said none at all, that they were just going to go in and wing it. So I'm kind of curious. This one has a little bit more weight to it. Is there a lot more prep going into something like today, or are y'all going to just wing it and play your game?
I mean, we had a speak over a few beers at the bar last night, so not that much prep, but they're good. Better than the other set, I suppose.
Yeah, just like a little bit of conversation over drinks, right? At least involved in there. What are your thoughts? You faced the Gladiators earlier this week, knowing that this one's going to be best of 5. Do you think anything's going to change today versus the first time you played them?
I mean, I assume they watched our set yesterday, so they'll probably take a few pointers from what Ravens did, and that'll probably change what they were doing on Friday. So I'm expecting different drafts, but I still think we'll come out on top.
And then the biggest thing, winner of this set goes to Worlds. What would it mean for you if you won this set and got to go?
I mean, it'd be great. I've never been to Worlds before, so obviously that was the main aim coming to that land, is to make Worlds. So hopefully we can do it. I'll be excited to go.
Do you think, and this is really just kind of clairvoyance, but with someone like Raffer behind you guys, like is that coaching like really been able to elevate the rest of Hex Mambo?
Coach of the Scarabs.
You're right. I totally blanked. How's it like having Davey behind you then?
I mean, Davey's doing a lot of prep for us.
That guy's good.
Yeah, he's very interesting, but it's nice to have him here.
Well, that's my bad, man. Either way, I know a lot of people are excited to watch you guys here. Good luck in your games. Thanks for your time. And we'll go back to the desk.
Look, it's an honest mistake. They both start with I before it. So yeah. I, Raffer, I, Davey. Just kind of makes the match a little bit over there. But I think more than anything, and for a lot of the players out here, I mean, you look over at some of the Solar Scares players that did qualify yesterday. You look at a lot of these SCC guys, and getting to Worlds for some of them would be the first time. For a couple of these players, it was their first time ever coming to a LAN. Silence had never been to one. April had never been to it. In fact, April mentioned how he had been an SOC just earlier this year, then jumps to SCC and is now going to Worlds, a wild path for him. And then you look over here on the side of Hex Mambo, you have Johnny, who was at Worlds last year, was able to make a qualification. You have Cozyx, who was able to qualify last year as well. And then Rapio making a role swap now, a chance to go to Worlds. Spudio, who's getting his first up too. And if I'm not mistaken, I think for Julio as well, his first chance to be able to go to the World stage. So a lot on the line for a lot of these players out here.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that I take from these EU SEC teams, and I feel with the Wardens also, is there's confidence there. Like, this is not like we are playing against a team we know is better, we're going to just go out there and, you know, try our best. They've already beat these guys. They feel like they have they have like this aura around them where there's this confidence that they think they can win this. And jumping into P's and B's, Glad's taking that first side. We've already talked about it a little bit, but like the Athena, the Mammon, Aphrodite, where are these gods going to be proud? With that Ganesh being banned, it looks like they are taking a little bit from the Ravens, because the Ravens didn't want to give that Ganesh up.
No, the Ravens do not want to give that god up. We've seen a lot of Sobek come from the European SCC teams. That's kind of going to been one of the top supports if the Athena and the Ganesh are kind of banned away, or maybe even if one of those two are open, sometimes you still see the Crocodile be the priority. But do like seeing this adaptation. Johnny's been a menace on the Wheelish, and you don't want to give him a chance to maybe be a hyper carry on that pick, so ban that one away, says the Gilded Gladiators. Opposite side, Baba Yaga has just been a comfort pick for Jangaru on the side of the Gilded Gladiators, so no surprise seeing Hex Mambo want to take that one away, knowing that Rapio has comfort on whatever other maids that you throw over towards him. The Raijin has been really strong for him. The Thoth, Kukulkan, always available for really both of these ones, so we'll get to see which of the mid laners gets to get their priority pick a little bit earlier on in this draft. Still one more ban to go for both these two teams. Notably, the Aphrodite still available, and I think that if Hex Mambo leave this up, Awesome Jake might go towards that one, because if you go back and rewind time to go sort of the beginning of the year, the halfway point of Phase 1 when Aphrodite became the meta, Jake was the one running that god. He was the one dominating on that pick, and almost essentially kind of pseudo-gaslit the league into thinking, yeah, this god's really good, but that's only because Jake was really good on the god and nobody else could replicate that level of play.
Okay, to be fair, she was busted when they originally changed her, and then they nerfed her a few times, and then Jake kept playing her, so that's probably like where the gaslighting came in, where Jake still thought she was really good and everyone else wasn't really winning with her. But Aphrodite's now available, and with this pick, the Aphrodite sticks out, the Sobek sticks out, and going with the Sobek over, which is something we saw yesterday, the Sobek prio over Aphrodite. Now, I don't know if this is a counter matchup where Sobek just feels really good in Aphrodite. Obviously, it's a Sobek will win the laning phase, but when it goes to late game, basically you're just playing to get Aphrodite ult out, and Sobek can do that pretty well. But now going over to the Mambo side, Johnny has played a Willix a lot, and then the next one that comes to mind really is that Camazotz, the Thor, the Rat. Kama is something that when he did play it, he was looking really good on it. We saw the Rat. It didn't look too great, but I did like the Thor also. So if he just goes for either that Kama or if he goes for that Thor, I'm fine with it. But this is something that was entirely expected. This Hachiman is just loved by the EU SEC teams.
I think a lot of the hunters,
actually every team almost.
I think a lot of the hunters have kind of gone this way. If you tell me EU-SCC hunter, first that's going to come to mind is Heimdall. Like that was their bread and butter go-to for like 2 years essentially. But I think with this tournament, Hachiman has just become that kind of next go-to. But I kind of want to talk about this Osiris. It feels like Deathwalker just single-handedly kind of brought this god back to the forefront. And he's done this before. This is not the first time that Deathwalker has walked into a meta and said, you know what? What if I just make Bologna and Osiris a thing again? And he's now kind of infected the rest of the league into playing this kind of pick.
Is he doing what Jake did? Is he gaslighting the league into thinking Osiris is busted?
Yeah, difference is that like the Osiris is doing a whole lot of winning right now, where the Aphrodite wasn't doing a whole lot before. But so it will be Osiris Hachiman, opposite end here. Gilded Gladiators go for Camazotz Ishtar, taking another pick away from Johnny. You're talking about Wheelish, and then the next up, Camazotz. Well, if we kind of look at Johnny's history for the rest of this tournament, Daji has gotten a win. Ratatoskr has not gotten a whole lot of wins. And then Thor wasn't a win for Johnny, but was one that he was comfortable on. So curious to see where Hex Mambo's jungler goes for their next pick.
And Johnny maybe having to lay his pick to the bottom half. And with all these junglers banned, we saw a Scream yesterday with a bunch of junglers banned pull out the Bakasura, which is something that we've seen Johnny play before, and it's something that he looks really good on. Before we talk on those junglers, the Thoth locked in by Rapio, which he's been hot and cold with it, I think is fair to say. There is games where he plays it, he's hitting abilities, he's not getting dove, and he's really just hard carrying games. And then there's the game yesterday where the Ravens were diving him, the Nike was in his face, Scream was in his face, and he was unable to do anything. And if you look so far at what the Glads have, there's really not that same type of comp. This is a good comp for him to be able to free cast and just kind of win the game for himself. So I'm going to need a strong solo laner from the Glads, maybe even that Nike. Never mind, Nike's banned. So,
yeah.
So a hard, strong solo laner that can, you know, keep a lot of distance between the Thoth and harass him a little bit. I've not been loving the Wukong. I don't know if you've really been liking the Wukong, but it seems really just meh to me.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to describe Wukong. He's just kind of been there. I don't feel like we've seen a game this weekend where it's like, man, Wukong really won that game for us, because we've been seeing a lot of Wukong picked, but also a lot of Wukong just being bullied in lane, which is almost counter to what you would normally think. Usually Wukong is the I'm going to win the lane, or at the very least I'm going to stalemate the lane, not the I'm going to go down 1-2 levels against my opponent consistently, get bullied out and poked out of lane all the time. But I do like that adaptation of Hex Mambo, banning away that Nike. They played against it whenever they were facing off against the Ravens, and I think they realized this god might be kind of good. So they banned that one away with the Morgan. Opposite end, 2 bans towards the jungle, Mercury and Thor. Both banned away but from the Gilded Gladiators here. So now Hex Mambo still has to decide what they want to do for the jungle. Options still available. I mean, Daji is still up if the Hex Mambo wants to go that route, or do we maybe see some classic Johnny come out?
And with the Guardian also available here, maybe they look for that Aphrodite here. That is still a viable support here. Charon's another thing that's getting picked a lot. I know it's not winning a ton, but it is something still there. We've seen a very small, other than Hurrywind, I think, a very small god pool for most of these supports. They've all been sticking to mostly like the Sobek, a little bit of Aphrodite, some Ganesh, some Athena. And then Hurry's played the Ares, Hurry's played the Sylvanas, but it's mostly been like those 4 characters that have really been locked in. And with those gone, what is Cozyx going to go for? Because I think you do want to save your last pick for Johnny. I think you want Johnny to see what is the mid laner he's diving, what is the solo laner that he's going to have to play against also.
Well, it will be Terra for Cozyx. And if you look kind of at some of the history of Cozyx's gameplay, has had a couple of different roles he's kind of bounced back between, but when you look at some of his top picks, Maui, Terra, Kukulkan seems a little strange, but that's because at one point was playing over in the solo lane for a small time being, but Terra, that number 2 pick for him. So maybe no surprise if you're a Cozyx historian going back to that pick and seeing there, but Terra in general has not really been a pick. So what is it about Terra that kind of stands out to you for this Mambo team?
Terra has not gotten picked very much, but this is one of her best matchups, like, in the game, period. The matchup into Sobek is so free for her because of her monoliths, where if she actually has them down, she's unable to be plucked or 2'd by the Sobek, and there's very little he can actually do. And now with the tier also locked in, this Terra is getting so much value. And when it comes down to it, these 5v5 fights, it is very difficult for this Ishtar, this Disco, to actually live the Osiris, Thoth, Terra harass that's going to be happening. And this is before Johnny even locks in his jungler, and he's able to see all this.
So now that Johnny does get to see the entire draft of the Gilded Gladiators, tier Discordia, the bottom 2, for the SPL team. What does Johnny want to go towards here? I mean, we still do have the Daji as far as gods that he has been playing this weekend. We do see the Mercury has been banned away. But again, we can always go back to classic style Johnny picks. Ao Kuang, maybe not the meta right now. We said that, though, but with Bakasura, and then Bakasura was a winning selection. Ratatoskr I was trying to ignore because we have not had a good Ratatoskr game yet. We have an 8 games played and an 8 games lost so far on the gods. So maybe Johnny trying to break that streak for Ratatoskr, put that first win in the column. Maybe with the team around him, could have an opportunity to do so, because having Osiris, Terra as your front line and a ton of safety in the back line of Hachiman Thoth feels like Ratatoskr can play either side of this fight.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point to bring up, where if you are picking Rat, this is such a fantastic game to have the Rat, because he's not really having to do too much. All he really has to do is kind of clean up a lot of fights. Osiris is going to be the one getting involved, blinking into the backline, ulting into the backline. Terra is going to be dashing in. Thoth is going to be harassing with damage. Johnny's job is pretty simple. All he really has to do is just clean up the Ishtar, the Disco, with how much damage this Mambo comp has. Now, I think that the Mambo still do need to, I don't want to say snowball, but I do think they need to mitigate a little bit of the early game. The Gilded Gladiators, if they get off to a win, if the an early lead, and the Kama, the Tier, the Sobek are all able to kind of play in the enemy's jungle, pull relics, and just threaten a lot of what they can do, especially Rapio, I think that could become problematic. And I think a little bit of it is on Rapio in this early mid-game, and even into the earlier portions of the late game, to not really be put behind. He needs to be farming up. He needs to get to that late game portion, because that's when the Mambo comp really shines, in my opinion.
And kind of looking at maybe relic threat more than anything. Decent beads, pressure on the side of Gilded Gladiators. Sobek and Tier are going to do a great job of being able to take that one away. Ishtar can maybe try and pull one in a 1v1 against enemy hunter. Discordia Strife, always an annoying thing to deal with. If you look over the side of Hex Mambo, and there's not an insane amount of, I need to use my beads now, really, unless there's a Terra and or maybe the Ratatoskr in your face at that. So it feels like Hex Mambo focusing more on just their inherent damage over anything else, maybe more Aegis threat than anything compared to the Gilded Gladiators comp.
Yeah, and I think it's 100% that. The damage that this Mambo comp has, and the threat that every character have, because when you think about Terra, she's one of the highest damaging supports in the game. She can threaten squishies with all of her damage. Every single one of her abilities do really good damage, and I think that makes this Aegis and the Aegis potential for the Gladiators very important. Are they going to be able to get some big Aegises off? Is Rapio just going to be able to rip through their comp with this ultimate? And I think when it gets to those late game portions, I mean, when you talk about a Thoth, when the game goes late, he is the most important character on the map, because if he is dying, he's not getting that ultimate off, he's not one-shotting anyone. And if you have the Thoth alive, there's always a threat of somebody just getting eviscerated off the map.
I think there's going to be a lot of eyes on the supports really for both these two teams, especially for initiation. Try and find yourself a good pluck if you're Jake on this Sobek. Try and maybe find a good wall stun if you're Cozyx on the side of Hex Mambo with this Terra. So I think a lot of eyes towards the dual lane of this team, and we got to talk to the Hunters already. They're both feeling confident going in this one. We'll have to see, though, where that confidence lies here. It's game number 1, qualification towards the SWC. By end of this set, we'll find out. Will it be the Gladiators? Will it be the Mambo? Let's jump into game 1.
Thanks so much, J-Mac and Inbound. It's Gordsmith. Of course, it's Doug, as we jump into game 1 of what I'm sure is going to be a fantastic show for this first set. But Mifflin, something does stand out. Me and you talked about it a little bit yesterday while we were on the desk. It is the Ratatoskr.
Yep.
Well, you know what? Maybe I'll throw you a curveball then. 65-35. Do you agree with how heavy, even though it's not as heavy, I guess, as we've seen some of the other polls, but how heavy chat is favoring Hex Mambo?
I think that might be my exact bookie odds, right? If I'm playing the game.
They nailed it.
Yeah, chat, good stuff. Good, 35% on return. Yeah, no, that's good betting. That's good betting etiquette on everybody there. Mambo's probably maybe like a 70% favorite, but 65 is pretty decent.
Keeping things a little more in line, right? Johnny, though, it's on the Rat. The real question I have for you isn't anything, I guess, to do with it directly. You can touch on what he's going to provide here. But up front, with 8 losses across 8 games, surely if it loses here, you just never pick it again, right? Like, it's just gone for the tournament.
I promise you this. William Newberry, I promise you this.
God.
It's a skill issue. It's a skill issue, man. Rat is not an 0-8 pick. Just break down what he does. He's got great damage output, global presence, good CC, adaptable builds. Itemization favors him right now. He's got great early game, and he's a good diver to deal with some of these late game mages. I just can't tell you why Rat hasn't been performing. I really couldn't do it.
Well, hopefully Johnny here will show us.
If
no
anybody
one
will.
beats Rat 9 times in a row. We'll have to find out. That's really the thing that stands out to me is his early game, in theory, can be like nuts. Like,
it's
he can
really
go
good.
Absolutely insane. And so I'm going to keep an eye on him, especially here in this mid lane. Jangaru as well into the Discordia, something that Vin played against Hex Mambo yesterday. Not something I admittedly expected to see this early in a set, right? That feels like a couple games adaptation, but locked in, got good CC, good damage. But do you think Jangaru has the synergy maybe with what Kyrmi's bringing with the rest of the team on a Discordia to make things happen?
I think so. The Golden Apple is going to be a major team fight changer, especially considering how many of the gods on Hex Mambo are reliant on their mobility. Catch Terra, all of a sudden half of her kit is essentially eliminated. You catch Rapio, and all of a sudden your damage is dealt, and you don't really need to worry about evade and punish. Johnny as well with the dart, Spudio, EI Jutsu, so that cripple from Jangaru going to be very, very important. But I think it's more so an answer to a 0 CC jungler. When you have something like Camazotz on your team, it's, well, I mean, usually my jungle's initiating, but now we have no CC. Who's going to do it now? Strife's pretty decent in situations like that. Giving over a little bit of additional burst to some of your backline divers is going to be very significant. So Disco passive more than likely going to Kana throughout the early game, but I imagine we see it shift up likely to Kyrmi through that mid-game state. And anything that makes your Camazotz more threatening is pretty good.
Well, Johnny, blink forward. Fearless back from Kana, though, stops that. Slows are irrelevant at this point. Kana, with a good retaliation, stops that gank before it can truly happen. No stun comes out from Johnny. Ultimately, Mifflin maybe avoids getting killed. Realistically, avoids having his blue buff invaded. Although I just watched Julio back. He's going to teleport back in, so it doesn't look like either squad's going to get an advantage there. Pluck on left. And that's something else that is going to make this lane as a whole just difficult, right? You pluck Spudio, he goes, cool, I'm going to dash away. And if you try to pluck Cozyx, as long as he's got a rock out, he's fine.
Yeah, so long as any of Cozyx's structures are available to him and on the field, will be knockup immune. So half of Jake's kit just doesn't work. We'll still apply the stun with the pluck, but otherwise not really a great target. So imagine we could see Cozyx making it a little bit more difficult for Jake in the initiation factor as the game starts to develop, but I imagine we see Cozyx also going for the dive. It's something that Inbound was talking about on the desk, just the damage output Terra has.
Well, I'd like to see at least the pressure still appearing from Jake and Snoopy. That's something, you know, early game-wise, that's where we've seen some of these teams really struggle, and Gladiators right now, no first blood on the board, but they've managed to pull themselves up, what, 600, 400 gold. It kind of bounces between that wave to wave. That kind of presence will be massive if they can dominate some of these more neutral objectives, but it really does kind of go to show maybe what we expect out of the junglers. And now that they're level 5, Camazotz is always an awkward one for me because I feel like I never fully can wrap my brain around when he's the most effective, because it feels like every time I start to think one way, he shows up the next game and does it a different way.
Yeah, Camazotz is interesting, right, in that he is really good at level 5 for dive potential. Kana should be okay here, has the ult, will be able to make it back towards that tower, but good resource burnt from Hex Mambo. Here's what you pick Camazotz for. He can go into the tower.
Is it going to be worthwhile? The apple
Needed that to hit.
It got a bounce, and maybe even a good bounce with the angle. Unfortunately, the tower was there, and yeah, you're right. Kyrmi goes in, and now you've got Johnny who's going to look for the knock-up, look for the kill, forces the bat out of hell, and at least is going to make Kyrmi play safe. So a lot of relics down, like you said, resources that get burned there for both squads.
Yeah, if that golden apple connects, you just walk into the tower with bat out of hell, and it's an easy swoop pickup for the kill. Evade and Punish was already down. You applied the damage. Even post-blink, Kyrmi maybe had enough damage with the passive from Screech to knock out Rapio, but I agree. You don't want to leave it up to risk, especially in a first blood position like that. If you give it to Rapio on that Thoth, I mean, Bobby said it as well. Most important player on the map around that 15-20 minute mark. So getting them to that late game faster would have been massively detrimental.
Being able to find, yeah, I mean, any pressure there could have been massive for either squad. Luckily, that bat out of hell timed perfectly from Kyrmi to make sure no deaths fall down, although that's not slowing Dzoni down at all. In fact, he's laying in wait. Kyrmi maybe taking the bait. Julio moves forward. Dzoni's hanging out around the corner. Fearless from Cxnnahh against the wall for Julio. Dzoni maybe coming in a little late himself, walks up. But at this point, Julio can't really fight. He's taking too much damage, doesn't have a lot of mana to work with. They are going to be fine with their own blue buff, but they're going to lose the cooldown alongside it. A little bit of pressure, maybe waiting a little too long around the corner.
Yeah, it looked to me like Dzoni really wanted to line up the double stun or wait for Kyrmi to fully commit with the leap, but it never really happened, so the fight starts to fizzle from there. Julio was never exactly under massive threat, though. Having that ultimate available to him, similar to Tyr, just allows him to get out of those sticky situations pretty quickly. And even had Julio been forced to ult defensively, that's where we would have saw the leaps committed by both Cxnnahh and Kyrmi, which is essentially what Dzoni was waiting for.
Well, now Cxnnahh. I admire the tenacity to dive under the tier 1 here 6 minutes in, but not too much going to shake out of that one. I really do think the draft, it's so interesting. Play, you know, at least on the right side of the map in mid has slowed things down. The draft in the left side of the map has nullified so much, I think, of the aggression that you would normally get from a Sobek Ishtar lane and made things, I think, more systematic for both of these squads. They have to think a little bit more about where they're putting their pressure. Now you got Kyrmi rotating in to help with the shield buff. It should be a pretty easy, secure win. It's not. Cozyx is going to get it, despite the ult from Snoopy. And now they're going to loop around. You've got a good numbers advantage. About to be a 3-on-2. Dzoni goes in, stunned down onto Jangaru. They want to get a little more. Apple thrown out. You need some damage, and they're going to have it. Cozyx will find first blood for his team. Now the chase onto Kyrmi. Good leap, avoids the knockup, and that's going to get Kyrmi under the tier 1. But again, a stray shot from Rapio. At least roots him out, knocks him away. You still have a 3-man advantage. About to be 4. Spudio can get here quickly, but you don't have the CC to lock down either Jake or Snoopy. So it's just the first kill and first blood over to the Mambo.
Yeah, that was a dangerous call from Kyrmi there to reinitiate. Has to deal the damage to Dzoni, but because Dzoni had not used his ultimate, there's really no world where you're knocking him down from there. Splits off, Jangaru isolated in his own green buff and knocked down. Hex Mambo strike first, but the Gilded Gladiators have done so well in neutral farm up until this point that it's not going to really reflect in the charts just yet. That's just Hex Mambo catching back up. Experience, though, starting to become a concerning trend. Dzoni's been nursing an entire level lead for just about the last 4 or so minutes. Kyrmi's going to have to spend some time farming.
He's trying to. Dzoni has different plans. Gets the leap, has the stun. Not a lot of follow-up, but half health on Kyrmi. Immediately forces him to fall back. Like you said, he's going to be in a hard farming position from now on. And it looked like, and maybe would be if you knock him down that far, a time to go for an invade on a blue buff. But Dzoni and the rest of Hex Mambo playing it safe. They're just going to secure their own.
Yeah, no blue buff to invade for now. Red buff on the men, but I don't think Hex Mambo have timer there. So instead, Dzoni going to dedicate his time to pressuring out Cxnnahh, but this is lower turn odds.
Yeah, you've got 2 stuns in a row. Cxnnahh still 2/3 of his health and does not seem to be concerned in the least. Like you said, I mean, first you factor in, what, 2 Fearlesses, and then the fact that Kxnnah's ult was coming up in just a few seconds. Your best case scenario is, again, burning from resources. Not going to get any of those. Teleport, though. I think this is an interesting conversation because we've seen a few of these, solo laners go for the teleport. We've seen a few of them go for like blinks and stuff early on. As of right now, we've got teleport locked in and picked up for a few of them. Rotation power. I always feel like a tier teleport into the back of a team fight is a little stronger than what you can get, although I guess it depends on the Osiris and what his build is.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying. Tier behind your enemy team is, oh, I could deliver the enemy team to my team.
Yeah.
Whereas Osiris, I think Deathwalker exemplifies the playstyle I would expect from Osiris really
he's
well.
Ruined my, like...
Yeah, the curve. It's just massively tanky, re-sustain on buffs. I'll stand between my team and the enemy team. Tier a little bit more proactive, needs to get things started. Osiris there to just essentially absorb damage in the team fight, and then eventually start threatening, okay, well, if you step too far forward, I can Lord of the Afterlife onto a priority target. So there's something to be said about both, but I tend to agree. I expect a little bit more from Tier just because of how much displacement he has in the kit.
That's something that, again, Julio played it yesterday. Julio's Tier is just next level, it feels like, most of the time that we get to see it. To the point where, you go back a couple years when he was in the Pro League, it became a must ban against Julio. Like, you had to deal with that. And there's a few players who have managed to make that kind of thing happen. And so, seeing what Cxnnahh is going to be able to do with it, I think has to stand up to some great performances. Same thing can be said, though, as you had mentioned, for the Osiris. I'm also a little surprised, and maybe I shouldn't be, right? Heavy weight on this game. And so it makes sure that I have a slower pace because you don't want to do anything that's going to end up messing things up. But now we're 9 minutes in, approaching 10 minutes. We're getting into the point where we're going to start conversing about like Pyromancer relatively soon, Gold Fury's on the line. What kind of opening? Normally we see something on the left-hand side of the map. It's going to be killed. It's going to be some pressure. There's something to lean on. Right now it doesn't really feel, outside of some experience that the Hex Mambo have, like there's as much to lean on. In fact, if they keep letting it go neutral, the neutral farm has been leaning Gladiators in terms of gold.
It has been, but Hex Mambo has always been the team that aims for the late-game team fight. It's similar to Season 9 Kings in that they'll spend the majority of their time farming up, playing it slow, and then waiting for that one golden opportunity to play as a squad. Snoopy, aggressive. Spudio's low, but he's got the ult.
Shouldn't be in too much trouble. Has Jake, has Snoopy, and Spudio's not committing to the ult right now. Takes a little bit of damage from the lurking in the waters, trying to hide it out, but just can't do anything about it. Is locked down, beats unnecessary, because at that point, what are you going to get away from?
Go, I lied to you. Ultimate wasn't up there. Completely lost it, so great opportunity from Snoopy to fully commit to the aggression.
Unfortunately.
Gets answered by Johnny on the other side. I mean, that's essentially how you would expect this lane to go, though.
Yeah.
You expect Ishtar to be able to bully out Spudio. Pretty often we'll see Spudio use that ultimate defensively in answer to Ishtar's ultimate, but Ishtar has to play far up in the lane to actually get on to Spudio, which will open the door to Johnny to make these easy rotations.
That is a good news in that. Actually, because Spudio didn't have ult, now has ult, maintained the beads.
Very safe.
And they burn the beads on Snoopy, so not only safe, but maybe potential to get aggressive. Unfortunately,
Whoa.
Oh my god, what an Aegis from Jangaru, unnecessary. 4 health, just one stray shot, a little bit of damage. Look, Johnny wanted it. Johnny's looking, but he's not going to be able to close that gap. And can't do much with the ult either. Good pluck, but again, this is not going to do much. I can't believe Jangaru gets out of there. And now with Johnny's ult down, they have some chase potential, and they're going to go for it. You got Cozyx to come in and help you out, and you got Rapio joining the fray. Now Jake is the one who's isolated and locked down. The Fury doing a little bit to help out, but it's not going to get the job done. Good dash from Jake should get some separation. Do Hex Mambo feel confident enough to pull a Fury? Not without Rapio's ult, so instead reset from Johnny and a reset from the rest of the crew.
That peel from Jake was just perfect. Kyrmi is dead to rights there if Hex Mambo was allowed to continue walking forward. So pluck timing, just perfect from Jake. Puts a target on his back. Okay, Sobek no dash. Let's try and deal with them. But Jake, nice juke shoes, just tanky enough to survive that onslaught of damage. Hex Mambo not happy, letting 2 of those kills walk out of there. I understand the idea from the Gilded Gladiators there. Johnny just uses ultimate. There's no way he can get out of this situation. Let's try and jump on him. But once Screech misses from Kyrmi, that's essentially your kill pressure gone as well. So right to disengage from that position. Hex Mambo, though, they've burnt so many resources off the Gladiators. In particular, Jangaru for the next minute and a half. Pretty much got nothing in the tank there.
Now with the beacon up, got a 3v2 in mid. Interesting positioning because Cxnnahh looks like he's rotating over, but I don't know timing-wise if it's going to help. Jake steps up, and that's going to slow things down. It's a pluck onto the Terra. Johnny and Kyrmi in a little bit of a skirmish onto the left side. And now, slow rotation, but maybe even a teleport coming through from the Osiris to get in here and make sure the numbers are even. Matching the rotation from the tier. Beacon in favor of Hex Mambo, already halfway charged on their side. 3/4, and it looks like a lot of the fight from the Gilded Gladiators disappears around that one. Not willing to overcommit for the beacon.
No, the Gladiators didn't exactly have the great position for it. Kyrmi dropped down to about half HP in a small skirmish up against Johnny. Don't want to dedicate to the dive. Rapio has so many resources, and as we just talked about, Jangaru having none, means that that's never really a fight you want to fully commit to. So once Julio shows himself, that's essentially the final nail in the coffin there for the Gilded Gladiators.
Spudio might be in danger. Well, we mentioned safety, right? Ult and beads. And it might actually end up being Jake. Good wall.
Nice.
Catches out the dash as well. Wow, the blocks just barely. Jake squeaks through there. Now Johnny comes in, wants to find the last bit of damage. Can't quite close it out, but the dash, the dart, it should get him close. You've got Kyrmi coming up behind you. Might be a better target. And instead blinks forward. He wants the kill, finds one. And now with Jake re-engaging, gets a second for Johnny. Now up against Snoopy. Might need a little help to stun. Buys some time and is holding out as best he can.
No
Dart
way.
goes forward. If Johnny makes it out of here with a double kill, he's getting away with murder, and no one can chase him down.
Johnny's a freak, man. That's not normal behavior. Someone check him PC. Catches the dash from Snoopy to avoid death, puts on the juke shoes after dropping a double kill, whiffs Acorn, just essentially says, I'm not killing Jake. I whiffed my Acorn. Well, I'm going to go back to base. Oh, God, Kyrmi's 10% HP right next to me. Jake has to reinitiate the peel, and now Snoopy's just dead?
Yeah, nothing you can do about that one. Hey, the ult was really nice. Got a stun at the end, but
wow.
just got out of position. And look at that. Like, we were talking a little bit about experience. We were talking a little bit about gold in the farm for the Gladiators. Can't do much when everybody gets killed off. And now Johnny, I mean, first off, first bounty on the board, 3-0. But like you said, kind of an insane double kill, and then for Snoopy to die right afterward, I mean, is maybe telling and gives a big advantage over to Hex Mambo.
You could replay that exact sequence 100 times. Snoopy gets that kill 85% of the time. That stun on dash was just ridiculous. It must have been within microseconds of the cooldown coming up as well. Johnny just on top of his timers, mechanics on point, and that's why he's been hailed as the best jungler out of the EUSEC.
Well, Terra in a little bit of trouble here. Kyrmi going to try to close it out. You've got a lot of people chasing for just one kill on the support, and they're going to go for the Fearless Chain. They've got the lockdown, but they just don't have the
Julio
damage
blocked
follow-up, and now you've got Hex Mambo coming in, Johnny with the stun, and Johnny with another kill on the board, up into the sky, and who's he going to look for? Is he going for Jangaru, or is he going to go back for Jake? He opts in for the kill instead, and should be looking at helping take down the support Gladiators. Down now 1-7, and it is not slowing down for Hex Mambo. The chase is on. Cxnnahh comes in. Cxnnahh knocked down because of it. All it takes is a little more damage. Oh my God, the jukes. They at least turn around Johnny. Big bounty off the board. Jangaru needs to get out of here if he can. Aegis used damage there. The long range shots, but luckily the distance is still enough. Gladiators, at least one of them, able to walk out of the arena.
Talk about that peel from Julio, though. Just catches the golden apple. Snoop, dash, wrong direction. Spudio, I mean, he's going to make it look easy. What do you say about that, Gore?
You know what? I liked what Ishtar said, which is just not again. Man, like,
what's going on? The Gladiators were hanging in there. They were dominating the macro farm. They were playing it slow, and then all of a sudden just one sequence of mistakes leads to bleed out all the way across the map. I mean, I understand Snoop there. He's saying, I can't give up any more space. If I lose out on this fight, we've been losing everywhere else. Something has to go well. If Dash connects, things look good. Does a ton of damage. Just unfortunate for him, and loses out on the Aegis at that. That means next rotation from Johnny, I think that you got a pretty easy target there.
And that, honestly, that's the one that's standing out the most to me right now, is these rotations from Johnny. And Johnny's just presence on the map, right? Because I think of Ratatoskr relatively early. I like to root for an early rat, and that's mainly because I like action. I'm very simple-minded. And so to see him kind of jump in, you know, after that double kill, I feel like that, you know, like you said, it opened the floodgates, or maybe it was the crack in the dam. Something happened, and suddenly the water's flowing now, and that's really what matters. And that Hex Mambo, whatever was holding him back, whatever was making him feel, I'm not even going to say timid, but more passive in those fights, they realized, wait a minute, we could just kind of do this. And the fact that Spudio is going above and beyond to then take solo kills as well, I think showcases where their confidence level is.
Yeah, I mean, once the team's playing like that, you can realize, all right, even if Spudio drops that kill, my team just won a massive team fight on the right-hand side. Yeah. I'm allowed to go for these risky plays because if I die, worst case scenario, Snoopy catches up in levels, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not even significant. But if he does kill Snoopy, okay, well, now I'm even further ahead as we are all the way across the map. So Hex Mambo, I mean, they just found their opportunity. They bide their time. It was patience. I don't even know that it was trepidation. I think that was a pace of game throughout the early that was dictated by the Gilded Gladiators positioning. So often it was, we're only showing up for neutral farm, otherwise we're going back into our own jungle and playing it safe. So Hex Mambo never really had easy opportunities to get the fight rolling. But Hex Mambo essentially decides, oh, you know, double kill for Dzoni. We've got a little bit of lead. Let's start grouping up a little bit more. Let's see if we can maybe pressure this tier 1 tower, catch them at one of these mid-camp fights. And the Gilded Gladiators were still in, all right, it's still early game, slow farm mode. Hex Mambo wasn't playing that game.
Yeah, no, they are above and beyond. The one thing that's standing out, and I'm going to want to look at the map when we get back in, just because it did feel like we had a moment, in some of these moments, a big fight on right. Losing Dzoni maybe causes a little bit of trouble, but it feels like you could have put some pressure onto a neutral objective, right? We're 17 minutes in. You've got the damage. Maybe you need Spudio to rotate over, and since he was getting his solo kill over and left, that kind of strands you in that opportunity, but it is, as of right now, a decent lead. But it could be bigger, right? Is really kind of where my mind is at. And I'm wondering, when do you see Hex Mambo feeling confident enough to go for those if they're already winning massive fights like that and not going for it?
You just need to have either Dzoni or Spudio at the neutral objective. The rest of them don't exactly have great DPS. So if Johnny's knocked down on right, Pyromancer opportunities go down pretty significantly. That's not to say that they can't do it. It would just take them a very long time.
Yeah.
Same with Spudio. If Spudio's there's your objective DPS. So once they're grouped up, once Spudio's allowed to leave lane, if Dzoni survives one of those team fights, I think that's where the Gilded Gladiators are going to really struggle around these neutral objectives. Rapio's got really good objective secure. Burn, not so much.
We'll see if that comes into the equation. Ult up for Rapio right now. In fact, everybody's about to have it, and Spudio gets his just as I talk about it. Beacon's up. Last time around, we had a massive grouping, but Hex Mambo's just kind of overall presence was enough to ward off the Gladiators. This time around, there's just no presence from the Gladiators in general. Hex Mambo rotates in. Should be a pretty easy capture. Jake is going to step forward and play nuisance for a little bit. Has some backup behind him if they feel confident. In fact, a lot of Hex Mambo have kind of abandoned this fight, instead looking for something else. Leap over the wall. The chase down. Fearlesses are going to be gone, and there's going to be the knock-up. Dzoni wants a little more, needs the damage, finds it. Kills off Kana for the 10th one on the board for Hex Mambo. They managed to get the beacon, and now they might even have Kyrmi locked down in a good spot. Leap from the Camazotz gets the distance. So it's just going to be a blue buff invade, but Kyrmi, rightly so, walks in, secures that, keeps it going for his team. At least a small victory in a sea of loss.
Very safe on that Camazotz, so he's allowed to do it. If Bat Out of Hell is available, you can essentially play like you've got 2 lives. It might as well just be a Scarab's Blessing. How much of a good a repositioning tool it is, and removing yourself from the playfield always going to be really, really powerful. Pyromancer seems to be the target here for Hex Mambo. Johnny's nearby. He's not hitting it. Looks more to be baiting Jang out.
Trying to find something. Might have just found something massive in the beads, and then the kill.
Yikes.
Rapio with the shot is going to be able to sneak that one onto his belt. Also sneaky. 3-0 now for the Thoth. And you had said it, as long as Dzoni gets to live through it on right, if Spudio's not there, you'll have the damage, and they're going to have the damage. Now, it's about defending this Fury. Spudio sees it, has some damage that he can throw out. Kana's going to come around and look for pressure. Julio around the back, they're looking for it. Gladiators secure the Fury, but they have to get out with their lives to make it worthwhile. Seems like some of the distance is going to be good, but no Julio with the leap. Chases down Snoopy. He's diving the tower, misses the sickle, going for the auto. Snoopy's dealing a little back, but you've got to have something.
Oh.
No, the tether doesn't connect. Julio gets it, but it takes a little longer than necessary. It's 2 kills, the dual lane for the Gladiators taken off the board, but they still picked up the Fury.
Like that little micro play from Julio, throws out the bomb to restrict exactly where Snoopy's allowed to walk, forces him to juke back towards the left side of the tower, keeps him in range a little bit longer. Had that second ability hit, it would have looked a lot cooler, but instead has to secure it a little bit later on. Otherwise, Hex Mambo, a clear winner in that trade. Neutral objective trade across the map, power to chaos, gold to order, but so many kills favoring Hex Mambo and stripping away all those relics, puts them in a great position. I would expect to see Hex Mambo rotate Spudio out of lane pretty soon. I want to see them on this Fire Giant exploiting this lead while they have it, because the experience lead is much more significant than the gold lead as of right now. and experience only matters for so long. You only hit level 20 once. Rapio's already there. Johnny's already approaching it. So if the Gilded Gladiators can buy another 4 minutes, 5 minutes maybe, the experience gap's going to mean just about nothing, except for the roles that are pretty far off 20. Support, in particular, you're going to see a pretty significant gap start to develop in favor of Cozyx.
Maybe something different that could happen in mid, at least for the 2 levels. Like you said, it's not going to last super long. Bat out of hell, used by Kyrmi. That's a resource and a half if you're able to burn it, and he is backing right here. He's going to get caught out, stunned by Johnny. I don't know what Kyrmi was going to accomplish, where he thought he was going, but now the leap over the wall, Johnny waits it out, they get the kill. And Mifflin almost served up to him on a silver platter, almost more than Snoopy. Right here, body blocked, locked away, and nothing you can say about it. Spudio puts his 3rd up.
That's what no wards does to a fella. You just feel safe where you aren't, I guess. Kyrmi loses track of the Hex Mambo and loses his life in exchange. And now Mambo, with 2 off the map, can go ahead and start pushing down some more towers. Tier 1 in mid, I don't think you keep this one safe, Jake. I think you can let this one go. Maybe even a tier 2. I mean, it's a lot of time on these spawns.
Not going for that pressure. Instead,
Fire?
they're going right. They might be calling for fire. Pyro is not up for a little bit. And they're going to have the damage. They're going to have all 5. And more importantly, they're going to have the secure. Cxnnahh will sniff this out super quickly. He is in the neighborhood and sees it.
Spotted him.
But who's going to deal with it outside of him? He
Okay.
uses his blink defensively to get out of there. Rapio even going for the chase down, not paying attention to the FG because there's no threat. Mifflin back there. They're winning 15-2 in terms of kill. They got 4,000 gold, and they're going to continue pushing the envelope as much as they can. Fire Giant on all 5 for Hex Mambo.
No idea why Kxnnah would path that direction if there was 0 intent to defend the Fire Giant. And there was 0 intent. Jang shows himself on the left-hand wave, so Hex Mambo knows for a fact that, 1, it's going to be a numbers advantage if there is a fight. 2, Jangaru isn't there, so there's 0 threat of steal so long as Rapio's on top of the objective. He wasn't, by the way. He was just chasing out kills. But if he was, 0 threat on steal. A great position for Hex Mambo once more, and the Gilded Gladiators initiator, Kxnnah, loses out on his blink, loses out on his tier 1 tower. That's called preemptive calling. I read the map there. No one's showing up to defend, which seems to be an ongoing trend for the Gilded Gladiators, who have ceased showing up. I mean, we saw it at that last Stygian beacon. I thought, is that it, or are they not going to fight anymore over these objectives? And that just seems to be the case. They're now being led around the map by the nose. It's all reactive play, and when you're playing reactionary, you're always going to be 1 step behind.
Pressure immediately on right. You've got Snoopy, you've got Jangaru, but originally it was just the front lines, and still not enough to quell Hex Mambo. Johnny is in, I don't even know if I'm going to call it the 1v1 because he doesn't care about Kyrmi right now. He's going for the tower. Now he cares about Kyrmi, but the rest of the team is getting aggressive. In fact, he solos him out. Bat out of hell.
That doesn't happen.
And it just does. I mean, he does exactly what he needs to. He gets a massive opening kill now. He's up in the sky. He's looking for the backline. He finds Snoopy, no problem. And the chase is going to be on the Gladiators, falling apart at the seams as Hex Mambo just go through surgically, eliminating anyone that stands in their way. They can't get the right Phoenix because the tower's still up. They can go for mid, knock that one down. They just need a little bit of tankiness. Julio plucked back, but it's just Jake and just Kxnnah to try and defend.
Julio finally taking up the bird for his team. Should be able to absorb all that damage. I'm surprised they're even going for the bird. I thought it was walking to the Titan side.
Well, it might still be. You've got 18 seconds, 10 before Kyrmi's back, and you might find another kill. Jake's low, and he passed towards the right. They're going to give that one up. Hex Mambo fall back, recognizing that the numbers are not going to play quite in their favor. If they have that tier 2 and right already knocked down, then I think you're right. They just rush into the Titan room. Unfortunately, they had too much to do. It's still available.
Yeah, I blacked out. I thought the right side bird was gone. I mean, so much has been going well for Hex Mambo. I thought all 3 birds were down, man. I was thinking about P's and B's for the next game because this one is chalked. The Gilded Gladiators just have not shown me anything in the team fight. Gold Fury would just go to further line the coffers of Mambo, but we're looking at a Hail Mary from the SPL.
Well, they're trying to make something happen here, and Mifflin, unfortunately, something is happening, but it's happening at them. The Gladiators just cannot stand together. Separated fights, separated kills, and now 3 already gone. Hex Mambo dismantling the rest of them. Kyrmi pulls back 1, but it's a deicide on the other side, and now with fire minions and 4 still strong with the Fire Giant, they're going to march down mid, and they're going to end this game.
If the Gilded Gladiators don't go for the Hail Mary, they're guaranteed another base defense attempt. And with so many towers still available, likely they would have maintained 2 of their birds, but because they Hail Mary, there's the GG we were calling for.
Hex Mambo, game 1, Mifflin. They start out strong. 20 more kills than what the Gladiators were able to put up. And 1 on the board in this best of 5, trying to get a repeat of their shutout earlier this week.
1 on the board for Rat as well. I told
Yes,
you
he did
he's
it.
not a 0% win rate god. Should he be soloing Camazotz at that portion of the game? No.
Should he be soloing Camazotz like ever?
No. Actually, no. Camazotz is like the best 1v1 jungler in Smite. But that's Johnny, and that's what he does.
That's what he does. Man, nobody beats Ratatoskr 9 times in a row, all right? He draws the line right there. I mean, realistically, there's so much that goes right, but Mifflin, that game, it felt, and you had said this earlier, it felt dead even until Johnny just makes one madman play. And then it's like something like in Hex Mambo's brain or the Gladiators. Something changed in somebody's head, and suddenly it was just not the same after that.
Yeah, it was that double kill in the duo lane, and then it was death ball across the map. The Gilded Gladiators, it's like they lost all confidence off of that one exchange.
Yeah.
They stopped grouping for beacons. We didn't see neutral objective defenses. They weren't exactly grouped to defend their towers either. It felt like the Gladiators came in with a plan, a game plan of when they want to group up, when they want to play, and they were going to adhere to it no matter what. Whereas Hex Mambo kind of rolled with the punches. You know, I'm going to evaluate the pace of the game and play around that.
Well, unfortunately for the Gladiators, they played around, and they played around it real well, and they end up putting themselves up 1-0 to start things off. Gladiators are going to have to bounce back, and they're going to have to bounce back hard. We'll find out if they can right after this.
SMITE World Championships now only 5 days away until it all kicks off on Friday, January 12th in Arlington, Texas. So make sure that you are at the event. If you can't attend, then make sure that you are watching it. I mean, heck, we've already got staff who are on their way to the event now. Some are going to be flying out tomorrow all the way through the start of the week. And then, as mentioned, Friday is where it all starts back up. So make sure you are there or are watching to be there at the amazing SMITE World Championships event. Arlington, Texas. We got to go to the venue last year at the Esports Arena. It was a fantastic venue. Can't wait to get back out there once more and see just what everything is going to be out there. And we still got 2 more teams. We have to figure out who's even going to be there. And after a Game 1 performance like we had here out of Hex Mambo inbound, feels like Hex Mambo are one to be the 3rd team and the 2nd of the SCC to kind of punch their ticket to the world stage.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to say other than that was just a dominant game by the Mambo. It starts off a little slow, and I think that's pretty typical of Europe, so it's not that surprising, but that mid-game happens. Johnny gets a 1v3 around Gold Fury, somehow gets out, and then he also is able to just break the Rat curse. Rat hadn't won this tournament, and this is the first Rat win. Now he's 1-8, I think, because he was 0-8 going into this. Now he's now 1-8, and I was not too confident in the Rat going in. But after seeing what Johnny did multiple times this game, hey, get him Rat. Get him anything. Get him Rat, Camo, Willix. There's very few things that Johnny can't play and make look really good. And this is the play I'm talking about. Gets that double kill, catches the dash, ends up living. And I think more of it is, it wasn't just Johnny. This Terra was their 4th pick also. And Cozyx on this Terra was having a wonderful game. He was peeling, he was baiting really hard a lot of plays. He was also getting a lot of good CC off big ultimates. And there's just very few negatives on the side of the Mambo this game. And then if you look at it from the Glad side, it was a lot of just sloppy plays from them. Kyrmi loses the 1v1 in mid, doesn't use his ult. Snoopy gets caught out a few times with just, I don't want to say bad positioning, but just like, maybe he's just a little too confident in what he's able to do, and then he just gets caught out with it. And it's just over and over again. It just seems like every single play that is happening is going the Mambo's way.
Once the Hex Mambo stepped on the gas pedal, they never let off. It was the lead foot for them the entire way through. Especially, I think, highlighted best at that 3v1 that Johnny got, because that felt kind of like the turning point now.
Yeah, for sure.
For Hex Mambo. Because Gladiators, they weren't necessarily winning out on major fights across the board, but they were getting that macro farm. They were keeping themselves alive by making sure they were still on time for their buffs, keeping up on the shield camps, these cooldown buffs, making sure that these mid-harpies and oracles were all going their way. But that was the fight that kind of turned things around. Johnny gets the double, and he gets out of that fight. And I think that might have been the second kind of crucial part, is that not only does Johnny get those kills, but it is that escape after that allows him to kind of move on. The rest of the team can then close back in. You look across the board, Slash Line's looking fantastic on the side of Hex Mambo. 6-1 for Spudio, 7-1 for Johnny, 3-0 for both of the frontliners, Cozyx and Julio. And then Rapio gets to have himself a nice 4-1 game there on the Thoth. Now moving forward for this game, I guess the question really just comes down to, where do the changes need to lie for the Gilded Gladiators? Is it in the drafting phase, or is this just an execution on field for the Gladiators going to Game 2?
I think I would first start off with their P's and B's. I think the Sobek first pick is fine. I don't hate Sobek as a pick. But what they drafted around the Sobek just didn't make a ton of sense. Usually when you draft the Sobek, you're drafting a comp that wants to just instantly kill whoever Sobek's plucking. They didn't really have that. Ishtar's not like a hunter that's just going to one-shot like an Uller. The Discordia is not really like this great one-shot mage off of CC. There's other things that you should be picking that combo really well with the Sobek. And then on top of that, I also think having Camazotz with the Sobek is something that it doesn't work that well. Camo wants to dive the backline. Something like that, a Willix that Johnny likes to play, combos really well because you set up for him, can kill whoever Sobek's plucking, and that's kind of I want them to kind of switch up. The Sobek's fine, but the comp around the Sobek's not what I want.
With the picks and bans starting up, already 2 bans on both sides. Nothing different from what we saw last game between Gladiators and Mambo. A wheelish Ganesh for the Gladiators. Hex Mambo take away Maman Brigitte and Athena. So won't be seeing those 4 gods again. But now do we see a shift up here for the Gilded Gladiators? They'll stick with the Raijin ban. Hex Mambo, they left the Aphrodite open last time, but instead it was the Sobek for one end and a Terra after that. So it seems that might be seeing a little bit less priority, at least towards Aphrodite at this set. I mean, yesterday's set, you know, at the end of the day, neither team wanted to go for Maman. This time, seems like neither team really cared too much about the Aphrodite. Now at the Gilded Gladiators, they shift things up, picking up Hachiman in first pick, taking it away from Hex Mambo. Mambo's at least going to stick with one of their top 2 in that response by grabbing the Osiris, but now that just leaves open the Sobek if Hex Mambo want to grab that for their support.
Yeah, and with this Hachiman first pick, this isn't really like this is like an OP first pick, like we're going to get it in, we're going to win the game off this pick. Hachiman's just a good pick to default to, just to kind of see what the other team is going to play. And I think that's why it makes more sense as a second side pick than the first side pick, because there's not a ton of value in it, if you know what I'm saying. But still, it's going to be a very good pick. It's something that Spudio really likes. On the opposite side, the Mambo getting that Osiris again. And we saw Julio kind of switching up the build that we saw from Deathwalker. It was basically the same. He just subbed out the Executioner for the binding, and he kind of delayed that binding a little bit. But he still dominated the game like Deathwalker did. And with that next pick, the Rama locked in. And this kind of seems to be like the ADC meta. It's like Hachiman, Rama, and then Heim. And those 3 are like the ones that stick out the most. Honor was dominating coming into this tournament, and he's just not seen play whatsoever. We've seen a little bit of Chernobog here or there, but nothing in this game as the ADC is locked in for both teams. Maybe potential for a double ADC, but with how strong mages are currently, I would not really expect double Hunter.
I mean, even as far as, a drafting meta is concerned, we come into the event, 3-4 weeks ago, when it's the SEC qualifiers or towards the playoffs. It was you're grabbing your solo laner immediately. You're getting that top pick mage solo lane. Now the mages are out. You kind of play just about whatever warrior you want over there. So now instead we see very high priority towards hunters, and I think you were right to say that there's not really that end-all be-all hunter right now. It used to be Chernobog. You give a team Chernobog, you might as well call it GG's at that point, but we don't really have that hunter right now, so seeing such high priority towards them is maybe a bit curious, but we'll see the Ratatoskr once more. It finally broke its curse in the hands of Dzoni. Now we'll see if Kyrmi can try to put a win in his column, but the Gladiators now defaulting back to a lot of the playstyle they were kind of running at the start of the tournament, even through their regular phase. Back to the Charon once more for Awesome Jake, the only player who's really been able to find a lot of success on this pick. Hex Mambo, for their final selection, go back towards the Thoth. I mean, how do you kind of feel about the Gilded Gladiators essentially kind of feeling like they're going back to a state of normality?
Yeah, I don't love the Ratatoskr Prio. Rat was something that was picked in the bottom half. It was literally the last pick in the entire draft, and it's something that they're not putting a top 2 pick towards. And you compare it to what the Mambo got in their top 3, we're looking at one of the best mids, a very strong hunter, and then also a very strong solo laner. I just think the Gladiators for this first pick side are not getting enough value out of the first pick. And that it's not just the Hachiman. Like I said, I think Hachiman's fine, but this Rat Charon don't scream to me a ton of value. I think those 2 picks are much better in the bottom half. But maybe there's just no warrior that they're opting for. I mean, they could even taken that Nike that's been banned away. That's something that would maybe stop the Mambo from playing the Thoth, or just a good pick into the Thoth if it's still locked in.
Well, Mambo going back to the exact same bands that they had from game number 1, all 5 of them, Nike and the Morgan once more. Nike, just a strong pick in general. The Morgan, a nice shout towards Jangaru and his performance on there. And the Gladiators showing a bit of respect towards Cozyx, banning Terra away. Not the support you would think we'd be seeing a ban, but maybe after the performance from game number 1 at 3-0, I think 3-0-11 was the ending slash line there for Cozyx, so maybe right to ban that one out, as well as the Mercury. I'm kind of wondering, more than anything, I wonder where Kana kind of goes, because it feels like Kana is just picking whatever is still left available as opposed to putting some priority or maybe some favorite picks his way, because it feels like that Kana's kind of just been defaulting back to his comfort level. And while the King Arthur is a bit out of the box, haven't really seen a whole lot of success out of there, so for my money's worth, probably wouldn't want to see that. Wukong have not been impressed just in general by the god for what feels like a long time. He just kind of feels like the I'm existing style of play right now. I wonder where we see the Gladiators go, because they do end up giving up Sobek over to Hex Mambo, which was the first pick in game number 1.
Yeah, and with that Terra ban, it just leaves open the Sobek pick in the second half for the Mambo. So the Mambo almost seem like they have this exact comp that they have played before that they've really liked. With that Scylla hover,
that would have been something.
I would have been
excited for that.
A little curious he was going to lock that in. They go for the Morgan instead. Tyr is being hovered. But like I was saying, this Mambo 4 picks are insane. This is something that if they were like blind picking, you could see them picking these exact odds.
I was kind of hoping for that Scylla. Not necessarily even because Scylla is a top pick or anything like that, but it's something out of the box, and it really feels like going against some of these SEC teams, you kind of need to play a little bit out there. You need to kind of get a straight pick that they're not quite used to, because they're those same ones doing that exact thing to the SPL teams. Nobody was playing Bologna Osiris. I mean, granted, nobody was really playing Warriors going into this event anyways, but nobody else was really looking at these auto attack style gods. And then in walks Deathwalker, says, hey, here's these two gods. I dare you to try and deal with them. And nobody really was able to. And now it feels like other teams are trying to adapt towards that. It is the Morgan Le Fay and Tyr, and then a Thor response for Hex Mambo. Seeing Johnny back on this pick, didn't have the strongest performance on the pick whenever he did get his hands on it, but now given the team around him, how are you kind of feeling about this Hex Mambo draft as a whole?
I love the Mambo picks. I don't necessarily love the Thor. I think the Thor is just a good pick. I don't think it's anything about it that screams it's really good into this Gilded Gladiators comp. There is a lot of dashes, though, so that is the positive, but it's not something like where if you're playing it into like Thoth, it's very difficult for the Thoth to play, but it does block a lot of the dashes. I just am in love with this Mambo pick and bans. I think they played through the P's and B's perfectly. I think they have got the exact comp that they need to take the second game. And comparing it to the other side, the Gilded Gladiators just kind of seem like they're on the back foot in P's and B's. A lot of these gods don't really combo together that well. I think Rat Tyr maybe is a good dive combo. I think they both bring a little bit of damage. Rat good cleanup. Tyr has pretty solid cleanup also. But how they play as 5 doesn't really make a ton of sense to me.
When you look at what Hex Mambo are going to be diving with on the side of the Gladiators, is Morgan Le Fay, Hachiman a safe enough backline on their own to be able to deal with an Osiris, a Sobek, or even just kind of, this Thor dunking into the backline? Are those two backline picks on the Gladiators enough, maybe comboed with one of either Tyr or Charon, enough to kind of deal with that dive from Mambo?
Well, I don't think the Osiris damage is really going to have to even be that high. I think the Thoth will get enough damage onto the backline as is, and there's not enough peel from the support to actually keep the backline alive. I don't know how they're going to deal with killing this Osiris while also not dying to the Thoth and the Thor. They have like decent self-peel with each other, but it seems like how the Mambo want to play is not going to get thwarted by how the Glads are going to play, and how the Glads want to play is not going to be allowed by how the Mambo's comp is going to play. And it seems like it's going to be a very difficult time for the Glads.
And the Gladiators had a good early game in game number 1, about their first 8 to 10 minutes, fairly strong, able to get themselves about 500 to 1,000 gold without really doing a whole lot on the map outside of anything, maybe one kill here and there. But how does the Gladiators comp kind of fare in the early game this time? Is this a comp that can start well early and then scale a little bit better later? Or is this, where does this composition kind of lie throughout the stage of the game?
Yeah, I think if they're going to look good on this comp, it's something where they need to get that early lead. But this tournament entirely, we've really not seen early game comps actually play well into that mid game and snowball to that late game and actually get a lot of wins. A lot of times those early games are good, but then you hit 20, 25, 30 minutes, and the game's like 2,000, 3,000 gold difference. So there is potential if the Glads do snowball this game a little bit. I do like their comp from ahead, but that is very difficult to do in today's meta.
Well, we'll see if the Gladiators can speed up the pace here in game number 2 and try and take down Hex Mambo, or are the SCC teams going to go up 2-0 and put themselves at match point? Let's find out with our casters, Gormizer and Mifflin.
Thanks so much, JMac and Inbound. That's right, it's Gort's Miff, and of course it's going to be Doug. So you jump into game 2, and Miff, game 1, it felt like a little bit of a stalemate for a while, and then suddenly things went very dramatically wrong, and then it happened very fast, which is something the Gladiators cannot afford. And Inbound wasn't necessarily really on board with a lot of this draft for the Gladiators, unless they can get super far ahead. And chat is even less on board than they were last time. It was 65-35, now 75-25. You know way more about bookie odds than I do, so how are you feeling about those?
Man, game 1 was so dominant. I mean, 75-25 is pretty standard. That is insane odds, by the way, in a competitive match. I might even say that it's generous to the Gladiators. I got to think some of those Glads votes went in before the draft was done. That's where I'm at personally. I agree with just about everything Bobby had said on the desk there. I mean, this Gilded Gladiators composition, in my mind, is almost completely contingent on the early game. If they transition into a mid-game state with any sort of deficit, it'd be very, very difficult for the Gilded Gladiators to fight back in. I'm looking at, and this is something I hate to have to say, because generally compositions, they play the game for you a bit at the highest level, but This is one where the Gilded Gladiators need to play individually at star levels. Like, we need to see Kyrmi going crazy like he did up against the Storm earlier on. We need to see Jangaru finding some solo kills, right? There's got to be something on the map that separates the Gilded Gladiators throughout the early, because the ease of play of the Hex Mambo composition, the relative power levels of their picks, just so much higher, the initiation much easier to come by. And a lot of this analysis for me is rooted in my admittedly biased hatred of Charon. That god has just left me wanting every time I've seen him so far this event.
You know, for good reason. The fact that he's got a couple
Yo,
wins
is he
is
good?
impressive. Kyrmi
He's okay.
is going to be good, and I think more because of the dragon flight from Jangaru than anything Kyrmi had done. Luckily, he's going to be able to get the small reset, but that's not that's a little ominous, right? Up front, that's a little ominous. Good for Hex Mambo, though. And going to make things interesting. I'm also, again, excited for this lane because it felt like a while of the solo lane was mostly even. Luckily for Cxnnahh, he's going to get away from the stun before it can connect because Dzoni was just waiting. But Tyr stays alive. No first blood just yet. Things are going to be calm. Outside of the fact that they're playing hyper-aggressive, and realistically, it's that Cxnnahh is getting pushed back, right? This is not something that was happening. Last time it was at least a little even over on the right side of the map. You had some control in the duo lane from the Gladiators, but not a whole ton. Now it feels like, and maybe it's just because Dzoni is Dzoni, but it feels like there's blood in the water, blocks off the Fearless teleport in, double tap damage, one more auto, first blood for the jungler on Hex Mambo.
Dzoni was just biding his time. He knew Cxnnahh was going to step back up to that wave, because why wouldn't you? Tyr resustains on wave, just pulled back in, baited forward. Cxnnahh goes to the defensive dash. How could he have known Dzoni was hovering nearby? Once Fearless hits that wall, that's Cxnnah's life every single day of the week. Dzoni, if he doesn't hit pay dirt on that gank, falls significantly behind, because Kyrmi's just farming the map all the while. Even if the kill goes to Julio, I think we'd be looking at a world where Dzoni's pretty behind. But because first blood goes to Dzoni, I mean, it's just ideal.
Now he's going to look for even more. Kyrmi's right there. Dzoni does not care. He is actually more than willing to not only try to go for the buff and steal it, but potentially have even gone for the fight if Kyrmi had really sought after it. And the biggest thing out of that, Mifflin, yesterday we were watching up against the Ravens. There was a single moment where I want to say it was, a wall from Dzoni ends up being on the right when it should have been on the left, right? And it allowed someone to get out of a very sticky situation despite the stun, because they were able to walk away from the wall. Whereas this time around, he's not going for the stun. He went for the block off, and it just shows kind of, again, growth from yesterday, learning from yesterday. And then, I mean, aggression. He's still actually the second one who's going to hit level 5. Kyrmi does it first, but I don't know that Dzoni cares. He's got a whole lot of jungle to go through.
Yeah, Dzoni's got plenty of farm on map to collect. Just that speed buff still can join up for the red. Neutral camps being available. A bit interesting here. Would have expected to see Rapio try and control some of that. Generally, Thoth pretty good at controlling neutrals just by poking out your enemy and then rotating through. Instead, going to go ahead and trade those out evenly. Keep your eyes on Kyrmi. He's in a bit of a precarious position here, Gore. Spotted out by Cozyx. I mean, double tap could just really ruin it.
Yeah, he's forced up into the sky just to retreat there. If you don't have your ult as Kyrmi, I anticipate a wall and, like you said, the double tap that comes through. Instead, they force him over to the right-hand mid camp. So he's still going to get the neutral camp, though.
It's still a major loss, though, for the Gilded Gladiators. Again, just to reiterate, the early game is so important here for the Gladiators. And Kyrmi is going to be the progenitor of just about every bit of the aggression, because Jake can't initiate. He's playing Charon. Cxnnahh can't initiate because he's in solo lane. So who's going to do it? What are you going to have, Snoopy EI Jutsu everybody for you? I don't think so. So you need Kyrmi to start the fight. He's elected to pick up beads in first slot, so he's got 0 gap close now. If you dart to gap close, all of a sudden you're at massive threat. It's got to be the ultimate. So anything that forces it is tough.
Dzoni dunked down. Cxnnahh killed. Oh my god, the damage, the double tap, the spin. Whatever you want to highlight there, all of it done beautifully. And it's from the FG pit that Dzoni comes and gives a visit over to the right. And Miff, that one's about as cleanly executed as it could be. And you're talking about the early game. I'm talking about an early lead already for Hex Mambo.
Yeah, Mambo's in a real good spot now. I mean, they're pushing their gold lead so well, too. I mean, 2 kills, already starting to get to that 1,500 mark. And every single time they find those kills, it's on time with enemy jungle camps. Blue buff number 3. Is this one going to Mambo?
Well, Johnny wants it. Julio zoning for it. Johnny might be able to come back in. Julio wants to pull it as far as he can. He took it! He took it on the fadeaway with the sickle. Kana's not going to have it. They don't even care about picking it up. They strip it away, and that's a little less farm for the Gladiators.
Yeah. Be serious for a second, right? Like, not everything can just go Mambo's way. Like, that's not how things like this pan out.
Flip 50 coins. If they're all heads, something's gone wrong.
The cosmic highway of chance is just all Mambo right now. I mean, Gilded Gladiators, they made someone angry up top, is all I'm saying.
Which pantheon, which god, we will figure it out eventually. Man, unfortunate for him, and you got to be careful. There's going to be some disruption. Forces the ult as well from Snoopy. He maintains the beads, but I mean, you're seeing pressure already where pressure's necessary. Stun, double tap, spin to get some damage. Johnny doesn't have ult, but he doesn't even need it. Oh my god, the snipes! Spudio, he just looks so good. They're making montage plays.
It's not just Spudio. He got double sniped, Gore. Rapio hits him from the center of the map as well. I was wondering, no way Rama just does 50%, right? It was hit at the same time. They're getting clowned, bro.
Rapio. Oh, he uses the beads, maybe actually a little bit early. Should stop the stun. Doesn't matter if you don't connect with it, though. And Rapio is going to turn that damage right back around. And kind of, he hadn't used his ult a second ago, might have been able to go for a little more. Instead, forces Kyrmi to fall back. Johnny even uses his to dunk down onto the mid camps. Oh, Mifflin montage plays. It's only 3 kills up, but it is 2,600 gold, 2,400 experience. And you can see a lead everywhere you look for one on the map.
Yeah, well, you won't see it on the Gilded Gladiator side.
Yeah, okay, if you look on the right side of the screen.
Yeah, the Hex Mambo are just dominating again. And this is essentially the opposite of what Bobby had said on the desk, right? Where these early game compositions haven't been able to extend their lead in the mid game. It's usually 3,000 at 20. We're at 3,000 at 7 right now. And Hex Mambo didn't draft an early game team. This isn't exactly what this composition was built for. It's just what they're doing.
I admired Johnny's attempts here. He was dancing on a ward a second ago, so Kyrmi knows he's in the fire giant pit, but also Kyrmi knows that blue buff is coming up. Johnny has ult in a second, and
Number
he's
4,
going
surely
to step
not.
up. Well, I mean, what are they going to do to stop it? You have the teleport coming through from Cxnnahh. Julio is going to step up again a little bit late. They get the stun onto Johnny. Fearless Chain is good, and they secure the blue buff. Now up into the sky goes Kyrmi. Johnny has to make it out of there, but he cannot. That's going to be a small shutdown. And finally, one on the board for the Gladiators.
Gladiators just needed to see one go in. That's massive for them. Cozyx off the mark with Pluck. Will let Awesome Jake out of the hole this time. As blue buff, I believe, secured there by Julio and Kyrmi. In some trouble, but it's catch and release. Finds the stun, misses the sickle. Lets it go.
Yeah, doesn't have a lot of mana to work with. Doesn't have anything to work with over there. That might have been the biggest series of wins we've seen the Gladiators get since like 8 minutes in game 1. Finally, things go their way. They pull it back. It's only 2,000 gold. Unfortunately for Kyrmi.
Missed his shot.
Yeah, the one shot doesn't connect, so Rapio is going to be the one who doesn't feel it. Now instead, dunk down. A little shy from connecting with Cxnnahh, but you still have the damage to control it. Kyrmi's knocked out for a moment, so he's not going to come in. And instead, it's just going to be a little bit of lane control. A lot of farm, specifically for Julio, who should be able to get ahead pushing waves in.
Yeah, Julio not only going to push the wave in, but grab the neutral, grab the totem. Deny a good deal that farm. Cxnnahh has been struggling. Finally has his second blue buff of the game, though, so feeling a bit better about his odds in the laning phase.
Yeah, yo, I can use my abilities now.
And he needs to. This is generally the point in the game. I've always said tier around level 6 to 11 feels like one of the best laners in the warrior role, just because of how much sustain he has on power cleave. Hasn't exactly looked like it, though. He's been getting sustained on by Death Toll. Julio doing real good with that. And has also gone, Julio that is, for a much better scaling build. Prophetic, second slot, stacking up pretty fast.
Yeah, already 2 on the board. 10 minutes in.
Farm.
And yeah, just walking Cxnnahh down, despite the fact that, like you said, this is kind of Tier's game, or at least the portion of it that should be his. And it doesn't look like it's going to amount to too much, right? Not going to be a full kill unless Johnny decides to somehow be on the right side of the map. Not going to be there instead. In a small fight, up into the sky he goes. Where does he come crashing down,
It's gotta be Kyrmi, right?
Kyrmi by himself. Kyrmi has ult. Snoopy has ult. And actually, Snoopy with a good dash avoids it. Now, Kyrmi going in. Knock up onto Dzoni. Damage is there. He's so low. Someone's got to walk him down. But Jake misses the autos. And no, Dzoni, he's walking out of this alive.
Serious.
Oh my god, he lives. And the rest of Hex Mambo get to help peel him away. I can't believe he got out of there.
Oh, man, just jukes out all the autos from Jake there. That is just ridiculous. It is a very difficult situation to land autos like that when Johnny's allowed to just go for the most wild movement you've ever seen. There was no rhyme or reason to it. He wasn't moving to get towards the tower. He was just buying time for that teleport to come back up. So tough stuff there for Jake, who does connect that second ability, but again, he's Charon, so like doesn't really do any damage or do any CC. Gilded Gladiators not quite able to secure their kill there. Hex Mambo. The lead, it's growing again. With nothing happening, it's Hex Mambo pulling ahead.
Yeah, they haven't gotten the kill. They've just been getting neutral farm. But, I mean, you saw it, right? Julio being able to control where Kana's able to and allowed to position. And then on the left side of the map, having that fight go your way as well creates a lot of a dynamic. Dunk down from Dzoni. Hammer's going to get a little bit of damage. Hasn't used the wall just yet, so has the block off for Kana if necessary. He's holding on to it a little bit. Might be on cooldown for a little longer. Finally uses it. Oh my god,
What
Kyrmi,
happens?
the damage! Holy, he takes so much, doesn't even make it into the sky, and Rapio comes over too! They all are getting their hand on the ball, Miff, and there's nowhere in the court the Gladiators can play safe.
Gore, it is not often I'm staring at the screen and don't know where the damage came from. 1 second Kyrmi's there, the next he isn't. Is that just hi-rez procs? Is Johnny just doing that much on his own?
Well, Jake's trying to get something done on his own. I don't know if it's going to worry. In fact, it might go against him. Man, that plug. Luckily, he's got his dash, but it gets rooted out. Rapio, with barely any health, is opting to take this fight because he's got Dzoni beside him, and Johnny's going to put up another one for the ult shot. Oh, Miff, it's very similar to last game when everything just blew open out of nowhere. But this time around, it happened at minute 2.
The Gilded Gladiators, it just looks like they've lost a bit of their focus, man. I mean, maybe their nerves checked right now. I couldn't tell you, but why is Jake trying to go for solo kills on the center of the map? Why are the Gilded Gladiators willing to take 2v4s on the right-hand side? I couldn't tell you. If I had the answers to these questions, I would give them to you freely.
Yeah.
No strings attached, but I can't figure it out right now. The Gilded Gladiators, they're just scrounging for opportunities on map. Maybe they're also aware of the fact that the early game was all important here, so they're trying whatever they can to rectify it before we get any further down the match, but this is not how you do it.
It's 4,000 gold.
Yeah.
It's 4,000 gold, 13 minutes in. 6-1, Hex Mambo have the kill lead. Snoopy doesn't get the stun he was looking for, and
He's
now
in trouble.
he's taking a whole lot. If you get below half, this is going to be an easy call for some snipes. Spudio into the sky, connects 1. Aegis buys some time, but 2 finds exactly what you need. Spudio
He giggled at
putting
him.
on the montage, and now Jake again trying to get out of here. Kyrmi forced back to base. Spudio's going to get a tower, and there's nowhere for the Gladiators to make a stand.
Spudio's cam, he smirked, giggled, and then tilted his chin up, man. I mean, that simple. Johnny was considering the rotation, not needed. Spudio had it on lock. Snoopy just trying his best to take that boxing match, but you can't be doing that up against the guy who's got the global that does 50% of your HP. You just can't.
Well, last time we didn't get to see a Gold Fury until late. It didn't feel like anyone had the advantage. This time, above and beyond, Hex Mambo just walk in and take it and dare the Gladiators to do anything. In fact, dare Kyrmi to feel safe in his own jungle. If he doesn't have his ult, he's dead, and he has to use it just to stay alive, just to go farm a little bit.
And that means that your initiation once more is non-existent on the side of the Gilded Gladiators. Your ability to gap close or chase down kills also at an all-time low. Cozyx, does it seem like he's worried?
No, he's the one controlling that fight.
Oh, here comes Johnny.
And it was a 1v3 at the time, Johnny. Kana behind. Johnny dunked down, saves Rapio, who's taking a lot of damage. There is the Morgan Le Fay, and you get clipped by the wave. So that's going to be 1 kill, finally, for the Gladiators, and they can chase down a little more. But there's not a big opening for them. They're going to have to fall back. Pyromancer's available. They might be able to worm in an objective. Biggest thing right now, getting the kill. Rapio, relics up. And so he's going to be safe next time around, but Miff, anything is better than nothing, and they finally found it.
Yeah, that was one of the most unserious initiations I've seen from Hex Mambo all week. Just walk at the tower line, to see if they could. You know, I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of reason to do it, except for the fact that they're so far ahead that they can throw their weight around. Unfortunately for Rapio, he's the one caught it out. Kana was spotted on the rotation in, but still unable to avoid it. As Kyrmi considers a duo gank, and Spudio, he just goes at him.
Not only goes at him, has a 3-level lead, is finding the damage. Now Spudio needs to make it into this guy, can't quite get there. It's a good kill, and then Dzoni makes it into the air. Finally, things seem to be going right for the Gladiators, but they got to make it out of here. Snoopy in a little bit of trouble. Dash disrupted, and it's going to be a kill. Dzoni, another on the board, and no Ratatoskr to help with this one. Cozyx into the lurking in the waters. Dzoni jumps back down into 3, and it's because he's got Julio. It's because he's got Rapio. It's because they've got the fight, and they've got the damage. They're going for Jangaru. They get rid of the mid laner. They keep these fights going. And again, despite how catastrophic it felt at the beginning for Hex Mambo, they pick up the pieces. They trade Spudio for 3.
I mean, Spudio throws his life away, legitimately dashing in on Kyrmi in a 2v1. And the rest of the Gilded Gladiators say, yes, finally, yes, okay, we got to fight. Spudio's off the map. We're rotating first. We're here first. Let's turn it around. But they're still so far behind that Cozyx walks out of a situation he should have never survived if this game were even remotely close to even. And the rest of the Hex Mambo were given enough time to rotate through and absolutely turn around the entirety of that engagement. Great play from Dzoni. Goes in for the dunk to peel out. Just gets one target off of Cozyx to make sure he makes it out alive. Rapio makes the rotation, slams the snipe into Jangaru, and from there it's wraps on the Gilded Gladiators fight.
Pyromancer to Hex Mambo. Gold to Hex Mambo, kills to Hex Mambo. This map might as well be Hex Mambo's with how they've been playing in the jungle. Myth, it's defense. It's looking for picks. It's trying to play carefully, cautiously, something for the Gladiators. But right now, it may be the best case scenario. Beacon's going to come up. I imagine you're not fighting that if you're the Gladiators. But none of the other neutral objectives are available because they've gone to Hex Mambo, but they're not available. Which means that outside of a Fire Giant, this is a good time to maybe reset and just farm.
I don't even know if that's the case, because if both teams are farming, the game goes on.
Yeah, I guess it just moves the goalposts.
It moves the goalposts a little bit further on, but Hex Mambo's late game is just better off draft. So if I'm on the Gilded Gladiators right now, I think the call is Hail Mary every fight until some stick. It's like the late game engagements where we see a team's base broke and they're like, all right, let me catch you at the Gold Fury, right? I want to see that idea from the Gilded Gladiators forever. Here it is.
Well, they're going to go for it. At least Kana's going to go for it. You got Jake to back you up. Rapio's low. They're not going to be able to get under the tier 2 for it, but that is a lot of pressure. The thing is that Rapio's got ice in his veins, doesn't use either of his relics despite that pressure. Never feels truly in danger, so manages to back to base, heal up, and essentially reset everything. Cozyx into the ult, chasing down Jake with the slow stun over the wall. Only one tap from the hammer. And that's going to be only a little bit of damage on the board for Hex Mambo, but it's around this Primal Fury, and now they step into the arena. They dare the Gladiators to come out with their armor, their sword, their shield, whatever they want to equip, and try to contest them. Because it is not their zone right now. It's not their jungle if Hex Mambo can have their way.
Yeah, they need all the King's horses and all the King's men, and I don't think we're going to see the Gilded Gladiators come back anytime, even with all that help. So it's just about finding farm on map. Kyrmi trying his best to at least clear out some waves as Snoopy is just devoured.
Spudio wasn't even able to get in the ult in time to try and take that from Dzoni. Dzoni just kills Snoopy out fast enough. And now you've got a 4v5. You've got 2 over on right, none in left. Pyro, minute and a half before it's back up. Fire Giant. I mean, it feels like, for Hex Mambo, they're in that awkward limbo state of, can we go for a Fire Giant just yet, or are we just going to have to play around and I mean, as we had said earlier, farm a little bit. You've got a lot of people on the precipice of level 20. Maybe on the precipice of getting a kill on Kyrmi, who's juking pretty well in the jungle. Gonna try to turn things around. Up in the sky. Where's he gonna land? Is it onto Julio?
It's not taking
and
damage.
If so, is he that worried? Has the ult as well, and instead it's gonna be a separation. Jangaru, Kyrmi on one side, Kana, Jake on the other, and now Hex Mambo. They're chasing down the front line for the Gilded Gladiators. Finally, alleviation of pressure. The Hex Mambo fall back, but Mifflin hits right into the Fire Giant pit.
And this is what they were waiting for. Hex Mambo, or specifically Spudio, get some crit in the build, so Fire Giant a viable option. Cxnnahh, throw your life away. 50-50 it, get in there, make it happen.
He's holding on, looking for something. Still waiting, I guess. Cxnnahh does not go in. Fire Giant free for Hex Mambo. Cxnnahh stares it down menacingly.
He had blink.
And I guess no ult available, so would have just had to blink in and try to go for something, but like you said, didn't. Now we got 5 members of Hex Mambo, 20 minutes in, 11-3, 10K gold up already, and they've got the Fire Giant for the first time.
It's Hex Mambo's game, Gore. There's no other way to cut it. I mean, 10,000, Fire Giant on all 5, plenty of towers to collect gold from, Pyromancer on the men. There's no way the Gilded Gladiators could take a fight there. Base defense from the Gilded Gladiators, not particularly good with this draft. You've got a standard mage, so you can keep the waves out, but you don't have any standardized initiation. You are also incredibly lacking for aura defense because Jake's gone for the signature Breastplate of Valor second slot. Things aren't looking great, and that's generous.
Johnny, luckily, misses 2 of his abilities, and that might be
Things are
the
looking
opening
great.
they need. They could get this kill Aegis by some time. Johnny gets the teleport. Oh, no, and now he's got backup. They are not able to find him for Kyrmi. He's getting low. Luckily, jukes out the shot from Rapio. Does not die yet, but that is going to be an asterisk. Rapio, Cozyx, they want the snipe. They want to chase him down. They aren't going to be able to find him, but oh my god, Mifflin. They were so close to finding what they needed, and then it got ripped out from underneath them.
And you saw what Kyrmi was going for there, decides to walk back towards the enemy tier 2 tower. He was willing to blink in and trade his life, and it would have been right to do so to pull that Fire Giant off of Johnny, but Rapio's range, a little too much to deal with, connects with Kyrmi, and that blink gets stopped in its tracks. Meanwhile, the Gilded Gladiators try their best to push out elsewhere on the map, but Johnny, on the way back from base, will be able to match up that pressure with Cxnnahh. On the right-hand side, Julio starting to work down mid, and it's not as if Hex Mambo are exactly pressed for time. Where it's 22 minutes in, still 2 minutes in the power play. Go ahead, grab the mid tier 2. I could see them fall back to the Oni Fury. There's no such thing as a wrong play here for Hex Mambo.
The world's their oyster. And they are going to opt, as you said, tier 2, fall back, Fury. Maybe Beacon, spawn up the Titan. At this point, because of what they've just done, it'll spawn over and right, give them something to rally around. Fire Giant should fall off by the time the Titans are actually aggressing against each other. But it does not seem to matter too much, Mifflin. What was 10,000 gold before the Fire Giant becomes, what, 13,000? Just here as it starts to wind down. They're going to back up and clear out a lot of the camps that they have been able to just ignore for a few minutes. And spend a lot of gold. And this is maybe the biggest item disparity that we've gotten to see between two teams in a while.
I mean, and it happens so quickly at that. Experience still matters for the most part. Rapio 20 to the 18 of Jangaru. Still waiting on that level 20 for Cxnnahh. Will be a significant power spike for him. Getting that Bluestone is going to help out a lot. Gilded Gladiators struggling in the damage department. Otherwise, Jake's done a good job farming. He's kept parity with Cozyx, but Jake has also absorbed a lot more farm, I think, than Cozyx has. Cozyx only level 18 because of how far ahead his entire team is, whereas Jake, a little bit more present in those waves, likes to get aggressive on this Charon, so needs some of that farm. Snoopy, pretty close to 20 as well. Probably going to hold off on spending his gold until he can upgrade that starter. But all the while, Spudio's already upgraded starter, and next back we'll have maybe a Deathbringer in last slot. No Spectrals either? Goodness.
No Spectrals. Maybe no money to buy one. The Order Titan dealt with at the Tier 2. Chaos Titan isn't even in the neighborhood. Tier 2 on right is going to be proven, or at least proving me wrong. I thought this Fire Giant was going to be just kind of waited out for the rest of it, but as it trickles down, they get that last tower, and they're looking for a little bit more. Kyrmi and Snoopy making a crazy play.
That's big.
They get the Phoenix. They just need to be able to stay alive. Johnny kills one, and now he needs to teleport on out of there. Stays alive so far. Snoopy chasing him down. Wall to block it off, and blocks him into the Phoenix. So Snoopy eats an extra shot. Johnny, though, just has to juke things out and keeps on going. He lives through this engagement, gets a kill, but they lose the Phoenix. Unfortunately for the Gilded Gladiators, with one dead, now a second dead in Cxnnahh, and one just now getting back to base, they are able to march forward. No Fire Giant take down the right side bird, and they, Mifflin, have their Titan to march into the Titan room if they so please, and they are going to attempt 18 seconds until Kyrmi is back. Hex Mambo are looking to burn this down,
going
put
pretty fast.
themselves at a 2-0 advantage. Defense right now for the Gilded Gladiators, the only word, the only thing on their mind, and they just don't seem to have the damage to do so. They can't stall it out, and Hex Mambo are now up 2-0 and on World's point.
0-2 now for the Gilded Gladiators. And this is a game where I think you glean zero information on how to approach Hex Mambo. I think legitimately the Gilded Gladiators have a decent claim on we lost in P's and B's. I think they could very well come out and say that, and I would agree with them.
So much gold, man. There's so much gold. One Fire Giant, and maybe we'd have to double check it, but maybe one of the faster games that we've had this event because the lead for Hex Mambo. I mean, a couple of bumps in the road there, but you had even called it out where it was Hex Mambo more or less heat checking the Gladiators. Like, okay, how much can we get away with? Because at that point, they had been getting away with a whole lot.
And they continue to do so. There was very clearly a point in this game where Hex Mambo said, we don't need to play clean anymore. Walk at their towers, take 2v1s, take 1v2s, whatever it is, doesn't matter. We're going to win out because we are so far ahead. And because they were legitimately just also skill shot diffing them across the map. That double snipe towards the center where we saw both Rapio and Spud just do it to Jangaru, I believe it was. I mean, that was awesome, and I think indicative of what the rest of this set's going to look like.
Well, now it's backs against the wall. The Gladiators, their entire season is on the line, and they've got to turn it around this next game or it is over, and Hex Mambo will take their spot going to the World Championship. We'll have to find out how it's all going to shake out right after this quick break.
Alone in a world where I can seem to feel it.
Well, every game is now do or die for the Gladiators because Hex Mambo control game number 2 in almost just as decisive fashion as they did in game number 1. I mean, this one was pretty much the Johnny show, though Spudio put on a pretty good showing in the first early half, got a couple of big snipes. That one comboed with Rapio in mid lane, looked flashy, and then the solo kill under that tier 1 tower as well with the snipes up against Snoopy just kind of solidified that duo lane, but there didn't seem to be really any footing for the Gilded Gladiators in this fight because it's just Johnny at every single point of the map, whether his dunks are to stun a target or just to get him in range to save the rest of his team.
Yeah, I mean, you call it the Johnny show. I think the entirety of Mambo is outplaying their lane opponents. I think Julio is dominating solo. I think every time we take a look in duo lane, Spudio is dominating Snoopy. And I think Johnny is allowing his team, because he's a fantastic mechanical player, he rarely misses, and he just always seems like he's where he needs to be, and his team is there to like follow up off of him. So it just seems like everything is clicking for the Mambo. And you compare this Mambo to the Mambo we saw yesterday, it is night and day. This is a completely different team. This is the Mambo that I expected to see yesterday when they played against the Ravens, and in that game 1 it kind of showed a little bit, but this is gonna have to be a complete like reset for the Glads. They're now down 2-0. They lose one more, they're out, and they're out for good. This is their only way back into Worlds. They need to win these next 3 games, and the saying is, you take it 1 game at a time. And where does that start? I think it's P's and B's. I think Miff talked about it on cast. The timing for the Gladiators and how small their openings were so small it was near impossible for them to make a lot of these plays because they were forced into dominating their. Okay, also, like, what is that? Well, like,
yeah,
what is that?
That was criminal by Johnny. Goes in, quite legitimately misses like everything, and then just out auto trades the enemy hunter. Out auto trades Kyrmi in that regard, and then the hunter shows up and is also hitting him in the back trying to kill him, and then he just
gets out.
hammers out and then just goes on a goose chase through the jungle, walks away, walls behind him as he's leaving the dead Phoenix in mid lane, and it just puts on an absolute show for us here. Johnny's 7-1 to end this game out. Everybody else on the team still putting up some kills. Most kills of this game going over to Johnny, and rightfully so. I mean, the amount of work he was doing on this Thor maybe warrants a bit of that ban that we saw in game number 1. Because you think back to the picks and bans in game 1, it wasn't a Terra in that slot, it was Thor Mercury. Maybe this game we look at another Thor ban after what Johnny was able to do with this god.
Well, they also banned the Terra over the Sobek, which is... Cozyx wants to play Sobek. He will play Sobek as much as he can. And it's like that and Ganesh. And for some reason, we're banning Terra over the Sobek. And that is like where the P's and B's, I think, have to differ for the Glads. This Hachiman first pick is a good character. It's a great character. Is it a god you want to first pick? Not really. It doesn't define the draft. It doesn't change the draft. And there's not other gods you're going to be able to pair with it. I think the Glads should try taking the second slot, which it seems like they are taking the second side. And they should just try to completely flip the draft. Make something happen for the Mambo. Make them have to, like, think a little bit. Don't ban the exact same characters.
Well, the Gladiators will take second pick this time, where they've been on the first pick side for those first 2 games. So now Hex Mambo can grab whatever they think is their best priority, or we could even see what they did. I think it was what the Solar Scarabs did in their first set of the week, which was just, we're just going to first pick Hachiman because we don't care what we get. We just want to make sure that we have at least one god that we know is pretty good. Already immediately Hex Mambo changing up their first bans, but this is the luxury that they're afforded being in that first pick spot, is they can just kind of take away whatever they want. They don't have to ban the top of the litter at this point. So they'll take away the Morrigan and Thoth, both very strong gods. Jangaru has shown just his strengths on this Morrigan. Thoth in general, just a powerful god that I guess Hex Mambo don't necessarily want to put as that high priority first pick for themselves. So now, what do we see adjusting the bans for the Gilded Gladiators? Maman Brasheed's still going to be there, but the Osiris is maybe the big trade-off there. I mean, Julio has been doing really good on this god. We saw what Deathwalker could do. Gladiators don't want to deal with that anymore. Do you think that Osiris was that much of a problem that the Gladiators needed to ban it, or do you think that this was a frustration point from Cxnnahh that he wants to have something different, maybe a better chance in solo?
I think it's just a fine throwaway ban. They've been prioing it. I think Julio's looked really good on it. It's hard to teamfight into, and it scales pretty well into the late game, so I'm fine throwing it away. I'm curious where the last couple bans are going to go, because unless the Mambo opt to ban one of them, either Baba or Athena are getting through here. I think both of them would be pretty comfortable first picks for the Mambo. There's also that Hachiman, as you said. A lot of strong picks available for the Mambo. Kind of thinking this over, mulling it over a little bit. We also have that Raijin and Ganesh as a couple more characters that are very high prio. So it seems like the Glads are taking kind of what I said, where they're just kind of completely flipping P's and B's. And Mambo opting for the Will expand, which is, I mean, that's like a Johnny special, but maybe they just don't want to first pick it, and they don't want the Glads to then also get it in the early portions.
Or maybe it's the case they want one of the 3 big supports that are still open. Athena, Ganesh, and Sobek all still available. Glads can ban one of them and then take whatever is left over. I wonder if Cozyx does have Athena in the God pool to be able to jump in here. I mean, hasn't been a long time standing support over for this team and kind of in the role in general, so I wonder if he's got that Athena. But it feels like Athena's one of those gods you can kind of just plug and play with almost any player out there. All you got to know how to do is press 1, press 2, just about to be able to play Athena. Obviously, there's a little bit more nuance to that, but that's the simplicity of that god. Gilded Gladiators do ban the Ganesh away. So Sobek, Athena, Aphrodite still all out. Maybe no surprise, we saw a couple Athena games yesterday. Look great out of the Wardens. Now it's Hex Mambo, who might be taking their shot at this god as they lock it in for a first pick.
And now Glads have this really good opportunity to just go for the Hachiman Baba. It's 2 very strong characters. It gives them really strong and safe backline with some aggression with both of them. And then they can just go for that Sobek third. And this flip up of P's and B's seem to be favoring the Gladiators, at least from my point of view right now. Cam is another character that we've seen Johnny high prio a little bit, but we saw Kyrmi take that away in game 1. Didn't use it to great effectiveness, but still wasn't a horrible pick. But that Baba hover, I really do like the Baba here.
Yeah.
I think the Baba still, yes, the nerfs a few patches ago, she doesn't stack her cloak, her book is fast, but this is just such a strong backline pairing.
Well, the 2 wins that the Gladiators have gotten so far this event has
What's
been
with
with this
Baba?
Baba Yaga.
That's
so
crazy.
that's a good starting point for Jangaru and the Gilded Gladiators. So Baba and Hachiman. So get a little bit of that backline ready now and available for the Gilded Gladiators. So let's see where they go with their support. Not necessarily something they have to draft right away, since the Athena was already first picked by Mambo. Now, do we see Johnny high prio his pick, or do we pull a similar situation to our first couple of games where he kind of waits until that 4th, that 5th pick, see what the rest of the Gladiators composition has?
I wonder if Julio just does what Deathwalker does when Osiris is banned. He just goes for that Bologna.
Oh,
Actually,
no.
Nike.
Nike, one that's been banned away by Hex Mambo throughout the entirety of this game, and this set, I should say, now gets picked up. Athena, Nike, Raijin. What a top 3 Hex Mambo just drafted up for themselves.
And there's still a good handful of Hunters that are still available that they can lock in. And the Sobek by the Glads, I think this is the best P's and B's the Glads have had so far. But looking at what the Mambo has, it seems like this is just still a great top 3 for the Mambo. They're making good use out of the Athena. They have good follow-up with Raijin. They have a solo diver that will benefit from Athena ulting onto him. So I really love what both of these teams are doing. Going to this next ban phase, I want to see the Glads try to ban away Spudio a little bit here. Ban away that Rama and ban away the Heim. Don't worry about Johnny. I don't like this targeted ban towards Johnny because Johnny is showing that he will play anything, and he will play anything very well.
So now Thor banned by Gladiators. Achilles, the opposite end, which maybe strangely we say we haven't seen as much Achilles considering how high prio he was at the start of the week. Hasn't really had, I'm not going to say no success or anything like that. Had some mixed success, but has shown some major strengths on some of the big players that have gone, notably Haddix. Whenever he got his chance to pilot the god, made him look nigh unkillable, though that's kind of just Haddix in general with a lot of the gods that he goes towards. But then the Ratatoskr ban. So now, got to see what else Kyrmi has in the tank, because the Camazotz, the Thor, and the Rat have been banned. The Wheelish is off the table already. Johnny's already gone to show that he doesn't care about that. The Gladiators have banned away the Maman Brigitte, which didn't feel like it was something that really the EU SEC were leaning towards, though Johnny may be the exception to that category. And King Arthur, gotta be the pick one more time for Cxnnahh over in the solo lane. Has found some success on this pick, but now, in a do-or-die situation, has really got to make this pick shine.
And I've actually really liked Cxnnahh on this Arthur. I think he's making really good, strong laning phases, and in the late game, he's also playing it very well. But I'm very curious where both junglers are going to go. The entire jungle god pool this game is banned. Johnny showed he's played Daji before, but this isn't really a good Daji game at all. Another god that comes to mind for Dzoni is the Loki. But I don't know if Loki, especially after that buff, I don't know if Loki is still someone that Dzoni would look for. But nope, Daji is what he opts for into a very, very difficult comp to play Daji.
And then Ram, Spudio feeling himself a bit after that first game, wants to go back and get those snipes once more. So an Athena, Ram, duo lane, Nike solo, Raijin mid, and then Daji for Dzoni.
No way.
Gilded Gladiators now hovering set. Don't think that was going to be one to lock in for the jungle, because we are looking for Kyrmi's pick here.
Yeah. This is
Kali?
another one. I can't imagine the Kali either.
I feel like they're just kind of hovering. They're doing that thing where they're trying to figure out exactly what they want to play, so just hover a bunch of stuff to give us something to kind of talk about. So instead, while we wait for that jungle selection, what's the strengths of this Hex Mambo composition? Is this one that's really good early game, mid, late game? What's kind of the strength factor of this Mambo core?
I think Nike currently has a very strong laning phase, and I think Julio showed that he likes to bully out that laning phase. So I would expect Mambo to play around solo lane, play through that early game solo, and then transition to just mid game, late game, dash taunt Athena. And whenever you have an Athena, you're always going to have a good early game because of the rotation potential. But Mambo's comp does scale well into the late game with the backline of Raijin, Rama, and Daji is probably one of the better late game junglers. Very few characters can actually 1v1 her, especially very few that are available right now, with Lancelot being hover and Lancelot locked in. And this is an interesting 1v1 between the Daji and the Lancelot, because Lancelot cannot get pulled off of his horse by Daji. So it is something where you have to kill the shield to be able to pull him off, or you're just not going to be able to really deal with this Lance.
It's a good point to bring up some of that counterplay that Lancelot does have to the team. I guess similar situation, maybe not going to be affected by the taunt too much either. Not going to be affected by a lot of Nike CC, so maybe a strong last pick here for Kyrmi. But what is it about the Lancelot with the rest of this team kind of around it? What extra does Lancelot afford to the Gilded Gladiators? Especially, again, this is a do-or-die match. If the Gladiators lose here, their season's over. No Worlds ticket, nothing. They're done. What is it about this last pick Lancelot that really sticks out to you to kind of fight against Hex Mambo?
I mean, it provides good dive, and if it gets ahead, it's very hard to deal with. I really don't like Lance as a jungler. I think a lot of times there's just better value elsewhere. But it's just, as you said, it's very hard to deal with the horse for most of the characters on the Mambo side. They don't have that CC, that stun to actually interrupt him. But the problem is, they just have a lot of damage. There's a lot of damage just coming out everywhere that the shield is going to be slowly whittled down and eventually killed. It would be very hard to dive in as Lancelot into this backline of Raijin, Rama. And then if you also get out 1-2 health, Rama can just go into the air and clean you up.
Now, neither of our first two games have gone beyond the 25-26 minute mark. Is this a Gladiators composition that can work well within those first 25, even if they, let's say, fall behind, 500,000 goal kind of early, Hex Mambo maybe get off to a bit of a jump? Is this a team and a composition for the Gladiators that are okay fighting a bit behind and can try and hold out a little bit more to maybe push beyond that 25-minute mark?
I really do think that this Glad comp actually scales past 25 pretty well. Hachi and Baba as backliners are exceptionally good when it goes to that late game. My only issue, I think, is with a pretty good drafted comp by both teams. It's not going to really come down to who has a better comp. It's going to come down to, can the Glad's mental really hold out? Those first two games are something that's still going to be weighing on their mind. Those are two 25-minute losses. The Mambo have all the momentum. It's not really, is this comp good enough? It's, is their mental good enough to kind of go to that late game portion and continuously team fight well?
A lot to see if Gilded Gladiators can find that bounce back, because it's all going to start right here. The journey of 1,000 steps begin with step number 1, and step 1 is slowing down Hex Mambos, halting their momentum and cutting it off right here. They got to be able to get this game win, because again, if Gilded Gladiators lose this one, they're out of the tournament, they're out of Worlds, their season is over. Hex Mambo's victory here means that they get to go to the SWC. Can the Hex Mambo do it in 3, or can the Gilded Gladiators slow them down and push us to a game number 4? Let's jump in with Gormizer and Mifflin for game number 3.
The Gladiators have to make their stand here, Miff, and I'm going to go back to something you had said yesterday, and this is going to be put to the test in this game, which is that you had mentioned that you like Athena so much in some of those drafts, and specifically it was when the Wardens were playing, that you are usually going to lean heavily on what she has around her. Now you've got some follow-up for it. Chat's leaning 75-25 again in favor of Hex Mambo. And the question is going to be if the Gladiators can make their stand or if things are going to fall apart for them. But the Athena is a huge, huge win for the Hex Mambo to pick up.
Yeah, Athena just makes it so easy to play Smite. Athena is the crutch god for team fighting. It's the crutch god for the laning phase. Oh, my solo laner's getting ganked. Athena's there. Also, he's tankier before I get there. And also, I land with immense damage because she's actually got really good base stats on Defender of Olympus. So I'll be curious to see how well the Gilded Gladiators can navigate playing against this god. I do think that the Gilded Gladiators have got maybe one of their best compositions so far. A lot of it, again, out of that support role. Major Charon hater. I think Sobek is an infinitely better pick. Has some initiation, decent enough peel, can match up some of that dive potential with Kyrmi and Kana. Even Jangaru going to be a part of that dive to a certain extent with the Home Sweet Home. So opportunities there. But for me, at this point, considering the pace of this set so far, Gore, game number 3 is for pride. The Gilded Gladiators don't want to go out like busters, and if we're looking at another 25-minute game, busters they are.
Yeah, they want to make sure they can avoid that at all costs. Even beyond. I mean, the season, right? A long year. You had to change so much around your team. You get a new solo. You get a new support. You move Snoopy out of mid, have a new mid laner. I mean,
they weren't dealt to great hands.
Yeah, I mean, they've been molded right into where they are. It's just whether or not this team can come together here right now. I mean, right now you have to. Just to keep your season alive, let alone to push even further at Worlds.
Pressure and heat can do one of two things. He can either forge you into a diamond or crush you. Right now, the Gilded Gladiators feeling all of that pressure. Rotation from Dzoni. This is 3 games in a row now where he's really prioritized that solo lane rotation. Generally, we see junglers doing what Kyrmi's up to, which is trying to control that shield buff. Facilitating the duo lane, I think a good start. Snoopy needs some of that assistance here, especially considering what had happened to him in this exact matchup in just the previous game. Spudio getting the better end of all those 1v1s. This time around, though, Snoopy going to have a little bit more help from Awesome Jake, I think.
Dzoni. Something that's, again, very impressive is what a Dodgy is able to do throughout the game. And what Johnny's been able to do the last few games. Maybe won't be off to as such an explosive start as maybe the Rat or the Thor, definitely. But Myth, a late game Dodgy can become an absolute menace. And hitting that late game quickly is something that the Gilded Gladiators are going to have to slow for Hex Mambo to make sure that Dzoni doesn't get out of hand. Because it really was, and you know, right now, 2.5 minutes in, this is giving Game 1 vibes as of so far. In the beginning of Game 1, I should specify, which is that both teams are kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop. And for Dzoni, I think that's waiting for those big power spikes.
Yeah, but Bobby brings up a good point on the desk in that Johnny's playing a very difficult game here. I'm looking at, you know, at all the enemies. Where exactly is a clear Pal-Out target? Do you have one? Not exactly. CC immunity essentially across the board for the Gilded Gladiators, just in kit alone. Kana when he's got the ultimate. Kyrmi anytime he decides to hop on the horse. Essentially have to knock him off the horse twice. Get him off the 3rd ability. He can just utilize the ultimate to avoid Pal-Out. And then he's also got beads on top of that as well. Fortunately for Dzoni, maybe his job simplified a bit just by nature of having Cozyx on his team. Athena's so good at burning those resources on her own that I'd be surprised if we don't see at least 1 or 2 Pal-Out pulls, but the fact that I have to say 1 or 2 as opposed to a ton does just speak to the difficulty that Johnny's got ahead of him.
Now we can see Jake playing aggressive. Kyrmi is rotated in. It's going to get spotted out. The shield dealt with. The horse gone. Now Spudio is actually in a good spot because Jake does not get the pluck, and now, in fact, the taunt pulls him in. Damage is there, but you've already used the snipe, so now it's going to be Dzoni going in. Doesn't have the chase down that he thinks, but with the ult down, oh no, the chain just off the mark, but you've got backup, you've got Cozyx, and everybody over here. One more shot from the Taiko Drums gets one, but now Jangaru comes in. Home, sweet home. 1-for-1 trade in the duo lane and trying to make it a little further. You need some damage, and you found it. Spudio taken down, double kill for the mid laner on the Gladiators.
Great rotation from Jang and the rest of the boys. The Gilded Gladiators involved in that duo fight. A bit of missed CC on both sides leaves both teams in a precarious position. Jake whiffing the pluck on a no-bead Spudio. Really drops an early kill in that engagement for the Gilded Gladiators. Fortunately for Jake, second lease on life in the team fight, given over by Johnny. Whiffing out on that powwow, dragging Hex Mambo all the way to the Gilded Gladiators tower line. So an easy enough rotation for Jangaru to get there and turn things around for his squad. But look at the relics as they stand. Meditation off of both supports. Beads lost for Rapio. Johnny maintains his blink, but doesn't have that ultimate for a good long while. And it's a long CD, so you stack up some of that in build. Maybe a hi-rez in the next slot or something along those lines to help out with that. On the other end, the Gilded Gladiators not much better off. Do at least get to maintain beads on Snoopy.
Some of those relics, like you said, very important based on where the aggression comes from. Jake, I mean, you had already called it out, but playing the Sobek, first off, it feels right if you see awesome Jake 408 with a Sobek icon next to it. Something about it just rings true. But now you're seeing where some of that pressure can really expend, and that is the Gladiators. This time around being the ones who are aggressing into the blue buff, stealing it away from Hex Mambo, and scooping that up easily for Cxnnahh. They're going to secure their own as well. So Mifflin, we put a little pressure on him, like you said. Pressure can do one of two things. So far, it is skewing a little bit towards them, but it's only a little bit, right? That one camp and the one kill lead they have, really the only massive control points they've been able to find.
They've at least got Cxnnahh getting the better end of the soul lane as well. Slight advantage to him, who's been bullying out Julio pretty consistently. Stone a guy in that first slot makes it really difficult for Julio to box out in lane, and King Arthur's one of the best lane bullies in Smite. So Cxnnahh should be able to maintain pressure there. If you keep up dual lane pressure for the Gilded Gladiators, you've got really good chase down potential between Jake and Snoop. So long as the Gilded Gladiators can keep pace here, could be looking at a much better game 3. Hex Mambo, though, certainly no slouches, have hit some significant power spikes. Cozyx didn't exactly get to do the primary Athena thing, which is ult over towards the soul lane and take the numbers advantage because he was forced to help out in that team fight on left. Another reason I think the Gilded Gladiators should keep up their pressure on left, restrict where Cozyx is allowed to play.
Based on what we've seen about some of the late game fights, you need that lead as much as you possibly can hold on to it, or as long as you can possibly hold on to it. Julio and Johnny gonna contest, cool down, and maybe contest Cxnnahh here. They go for the damage. You've got the Athena. There's the taunt. There's the damage. Exactly what you were calling for, and exactly how they needed to do it. A second one on the board for Hex Mambo.
And the only way to stop that exact play from happening on repeat is to put pressure on the map and force a defensive Defender of Olympus. If Cozyx is allowed to choose the fight, I mean, it's one of the most proactive gods in Smite. Dunk down, find the taunt. Cxnnah's not going to have an answer, especially because he's gone for a squishier build. Stone a Gaia, great in the 1v1. Phenomenal for boxing. Got 3 people on you, you're just not tanky.
All right, now speaking of people on you, Kyrmi has to ult just to get away from Cozyx, who this time doesn't even have to ult. He's just still hanging out on the right side of the map. And absolute control with a little bit of backup from Johnny. That's all you need. Rapio in a little bit of trouble. Well, at least looked at. But Mifflin, I'm going to keep my eyes on, I guess, a couple things with this Athena. And the biggest one is going to be that Defender of Olympus cooldown, right? Because it's not necessarily the shortest thing in the world. It's also the meditation that's online. Jake playing aggressive, going for a purple buff steal. Taunted in by Cozyx. Damage from Johnny is there. But now you've got Kyrmi, you've got Jangaru, and now you've gone forward. You might be in a little trouble. Up under the powwow, looking for some chains and maybe a space to try and get away. But Johnny does not have many options. Makes it over the wall with the blink.
No
oh my
way.
God! And he's running out of there alive. I can't believe it. He gets out. Nobody else falls. No pressure from Hex Mambo. The biggest thing is Johnny's life.
I can't believe nobody on the Gladiators is ready to keep him in combat there. I mean, any bit of damage would have finished off Johnny. Jangaru, any of his abilities would have just killed him if Kyrmi connects. Any of those would have finished it as well. Instead, the Gilded Gladiators, so concerned with the chase or which way Johnny was going to retreat towards his allies, hadn't even considered that blink opportunity. So Hex Mambo's jungler, gifted another bit of life there. He was in a really bad spot, getting a bit over-aggressive.
Speaking of aggressive, Spudio in trouble, forced onto the tower. There's a defensive Defender of Olympus.
That's good.
And that's something you had wanted to see. Pressure, forcing that out. No relics, and no ult for Spudio. Cozyx has to use the ult to keep him alive, and thus you lose a little bit of that rotationary power of the Athena.
And take a peek at the relic selection as well. Cozyx actually electing to fully upgrade his meditation whereas Jake goes for a slightly more aggressive build, likely going to be that Breastplate of Valor in second slot. Again, of course, it is his signature. Jake loves having that CDR, but will sacrifice a little bit in that team fight phase. So if we continue to see massive groupings from Hex Mambo and the Gilded Gladiators, I could see them being a pretty significant advantage over towards the Order side, just in terms of CDR afforded to the rest of the team, as opposed to Jake himself just having it. So keep your eyes on that meditation cooldown. Especially helpful with gods like Daji. 1,000 cuts, one of her best tools throughout the early game. Getting 2 or 3 off in a team fight as opposed to 1 is significant.
Taunt used on Kana. You have enough damage to knock him down to half. Secure a cooldown buff when it spawns in. Not much else beyond that. Blue buff's not going to be back for a little bit. Mifflin, the thing that's really impressive, I don't think Cozyx seems to care. If his ult is down, he's showing up anywhere and everywhere around the map to apply that pressure anyway. Med comes back up, so you have a little bit of healing potential. Maybe it's going to be Kyrmi. Walking across a lot of wards, going for the purple buff. Johnny, Cozyx, Rapio, Jangaru, Spudio. All of them going to be over here, making their rotations to the duo lane. Snoopy and the 1v1, now 2v1. Spudio's got to play carefully, has to make it up to this guy. Can't quite get there. Good shot from Snoopy, but it's 1 for 1. The carries are all done. Johnny trying to get the job done, open up what he can. Needs one more hit onto Kyrmi. Is able to find it. Pal out, doesn't even need the pull. Falls back, stays safe, stays alive,
Johnny,
and gets out of there one more time. 2 for 1 trade, and Hex Mambo come out on top.
Cozyx still has the ultimate, has it charged now, going for Rapio. Jake goes for the pull-in, but gets dunked on in exchange. Jangaru, not enough damage to secure the kill. Rapio, sub 100 HP, will make himself scarce. And Hex Mambo once more come out on top on the team fight. Just baiting the Gilded Gladiators so far out of position, Gore. I understand the idea from the Gladiators. We finally have an advantage. Let's play around these invades, but they show up just a little bit too early, play their hand a little bit too quickly, and the rest of Hex Mambo are putting on notice. Okay, well, if they're going for the purple off invade, we have so much time. It's still 20 seconds away from respawn. Let's group up, get ready for the fight.
And what I like, you know, we talked a lot about like the Pal-Out, right? What the Pal-Out is going to do. How many people is it going to pull? Johnny hasn't used it for the pulls. It's the damage, even though it's not that much.
It's like an Aegis right now.
And then realistically, he has just to get out of dodge and make sure he can stay alive a little bit longer. That's 2 fights where he's fallen down incredibly low, and 2 fights where he's been able to escape because of the Pal-Out. Now, set up around the beacon. Jake, Cozyx, kind of hanging out with each other right now. Jangaru a little bit of damage. Taunt from the Athena, lines up damage from the Raijin. Rapio lines up a shot, isn't able to find too much. Snoopy rotated in, Connor rotated in. Looks like, based on numbers, the Gladiators have control of this one. Cozyx plucked back, and unless someone's going to try to make it a ridiculous hero play, Beacon over to the Gladiators.
Yeah, no one was willing to really rotate in for the defense. Johnny had opportunity to get involved in that beacon fight. Instead, hovers the jungle as Cozyx tossed in once more and dropped real low. Just avoids the body block.
Slow was good, and they keep him locked down. A lot of ults get used to chase him, though. 3 down on the side of the Gladiators. Rapio even able to turn some damage around. Johnny looking for Jangaru in the back. Gets a lot of damage out there and is now looking for just the Pal-Out shots. Lands, needs the slashes, finds it, but this time around, he's gonna get taken down. Kill for the Gladiators makes it 2 for 1.
Yeah, Hex Mambo not exactly matching the grouping from the Gilded Gladiators here, who've been stacked as 5 for a good long while. Spudio, eyes for Snoopy, and he's hitting hard.
Yeah, Snoop, my
Snoop,
God.
run!
They're the same level. He was doing the same damage that he was when Spudio was up by 3 last time around. Spudio just smacking him. It's dominance versus execution. That's the only real difference here.
Yeah, plus the additional attack speed from the second ability and a little bit more damage and slows makes it easier for Spudio to line up his shots. Snoopy, I mean, maybe he can't run because he's worried about Astral Barrage. He's like, I just got to threaten him off me, but I mean, that is a crazy time to decide to stick your heels in the sand and just stand your ground, considering all the while Spudio's hitting harder than you, and he's got damage mitigation with the assistance of Cozyx on the way. Good usage of Defender of Olympus once more. Nearly 100% kill participation from Cozyx. He's been all over the map.
Johnny pulls for the green buff. Kyrmi walks in and takes it. Cozyx is rotated around. Taunt on the Kyrmi. Forces the beats. That's going to be massive. You have to imagine the Control Jake in a bad spot, forced to use his ult just to disengage Cozyx, though. What is he waiting on? He's waiting for this Lizard to pop out, taunt, good damage there, and they take down the support. Now, Rapio in trouble, killed off Kyrmi, making sure to go massive on the Joust Field's damage, spread all the way around, and Spudio finds the last hit necessary, but takes a lot of hits in the process. Dzoni makes sure they have to split their attention, and yet, even though they lose Rapio, managed to peel everybody else out of there for Hex Mambo. They fall back. Gladiators play the objective. Go for the Fury.
Fury dropped low. Only one nearby to defend is Julio. I'm not sure if he's going to get there in time.
He's going to try. Like you said, a little slow. Didn't have the jump combo damage necessary. So despite Hex Mambo kind of chugging a small lead there for a little bit, Gladiators bring it back to even. Mifflin 15 minutes in. It's only 3 kills separating us, but the gold is negligible.
Be so serious.
Oh, no.
Snoopy, this time around, had ultimate available, so gets out of dodge immediately. Learned his lesson from the last rotation of damage. But the Gilded Gladiators, having burned Kozyk's ultimate, can now pull the Pyromancer as well.
Johnny nearby, Julio, as well as Rapio stepping up. Pyro's getting low, goes over to the Gladiators. They're looking for something else. They're going to go for kills. They're going to take care of Cxnnahh. They're looking for Kyrmi. If they can wrap him up, this could be an early Fire Giant. They've already got rid of 2, and they're looking for a third. Jake, no ult, nothing to keep him safe except for that blink. Creates some distance, knocks him out. You've got so many over on the right, but you don't have Spudio. So despite the objective potential, looks like they're not going to be there.
Nice.
Almost try to steal the red buff. Johnny even going for a speed buff and takes it while Jake is watching him. Pluck will be good. This might end up actually causing more trouble for the Gladiators. You might also see that Hex Mambo has overstayed their welcome. Kyrmi Cxnnahh going to spawn back in 2. You got to fall back while you can. And the Gladiators are going to do just that.
And Spudio all the while keeps up his pressure on left, pushes another wave towards that tower. Will get himself back to base. It is worth noting Gilded Gladiators do take both neutral objectives on map. Gold Fury and Pyromancer go their way. So, no way for Hex Mambo to realistically extend their lead from this position. Instead, we're looking at maybe a few minutes of stalemate, which should only favor the Gilded Gladiators now, considering this is one of the best looks we've had at them at the 16-minute mark.
Kyrmi, taunted, beats, used. Chasing down Rapio, misses a lot of the damage, and now Rapio's got backup. Palau comes out, and guess who doesn't have beads? You're pulled in, you're killed off. Double the kills now for Hex Mambo, 12-6. And it is the 1-1-9 for Johnny as they find Kyrmi and put him in the ground.
Yeah, Johnny's done so much to facilitate the team here and has been so slippery. Feels like all 9 of Johnny's assists come from putting himself in a bad position and then just walking out of it, right? I mean, decent damage output to be sure, but really it's just about baiting the Gilded Gladiators, and it happens once more here. Kyrmi overextends himself, had already used so many of his resources, dedicates a lot of his time trying to shut down Rapio, but once that first ability off the horse stance whiffs out, I mean, that was the end of Kyrmi.
Now, Myth, because you mentioned it recently, I feel like it's worth reiterating. The neutral objectives, the Fury, the Pyromancer, they went to the Gladiators. Now, take that in mind, keep that in mind, as right now, not only are they trying to fight back, actually finding a kill on the Spudio. I was going to mention the 1,000 gold lead for Hex Mambo, but that is a massive kill. Kyrmi and Snoopy combining to find that one. Now, the fight of the beacon maybe going a little awry without your carry. You've got to play this carefully. Jake goes in. Jake gets a pluck onto Johnny, helps put him down, and now the chase is on. The kills are there. Cozyx dash. Good enough to separate things. Julio's on the other side of the planet. You don't have to worry too much about it. Kyrmi, yeah, he's going to go for the chase anyway. Finds that tier 1 pressure in mid, and the Gladiators, Mifflin, crawl right back into the game.
It wasn't flashy, but what wins the Gladiators that fight so handily is the rotation from Kxnnahh.
Are they going for fire?
Maybe. They've got a little bit of time, but Spudio's got global. They're going for it.
Julio, surely he hears this. And that just means who's going to step up. You had mentioned it, Spudio. Ult available. Snipes actually might be the best secure on the map. Kxnnah's going to go for the zone, but he is getting shredded. Oh my god, the damage.
Low.
If he gets taunted in now. Snipes coming out. Gladiators get themselves the FG. Everybody's incredibly low, and Julio is going to play janitor, looking for the cleanup crew, and he's already got 2 put down in the ground. A third about to follow. Spudio, Rapio put themselves together to take care of Kxnnah. It's Jangaru and Jake left alive, and look, Julio, Cozyx, deep in the jungle. Johnny running across mid. They They are hunting. They smell the blood in the water, and they are chasing anyone, everyone they can. And unfortunately for Jangaru, the distance might not be enough. Julio gonna leap up, look for the knock-up. Taunt gonna come in, connect. Now you've got him. You've got Johnny coming in, but that distance, the ult, everything used to stay alive, safety from the Gladiators gets them away. But Myth, it only makes a small dent in the big, big hit that the Mambos are about to apply.
Tier 2 on right taken. Tier 1 in mid likely survives, but Pyromancer should go down here between Rapio and Spudio. Julio distracts the Gilded Gladiators, who are now rotating over towards the left-hand side. If Julio gets knocked down, Gilded Gladiators' significant grouping might get them the Gold Fury.
They're doing their best. This Nike not making it easy. There's going to be the ult, the slow. You might need a little bit more than that. Joust Fields come out. There's the kill, and it's right on top of the Fury. So Gladiators started up immediately. Beacon unable to be captured there by Hex Mambo. And it's been standing for a few minutes. This is still Beacon number 2. Glad get the Fury. So split a couple of those. Feels like the fight could have gone a little better for Hex Mambo after such a momentous turnaround around the Fire Giant.
Yeah, there was a really long chase. The chase from Hex Mambo over towards the left side of the map was either you kill Jangaru and you desync the deaths so they could continue their siege towards mid, or you at least prevent the backs and knock down the tier 2 on right. And that's where Hex Mambo land. But the overstay from Julio does swing it ever so slightly in favor of the Gilded Gladiators, who can continue their siege now on left.
Kyrmi beats, forced immediately by the taunt. Kana's taking damage, and the Hex Mambo that is, do not seem to care that they're supposed to be the team that's down right now, that they're supposed to be the team that's defending. No, they're going to play aggressive. It's Kana who gets pulled in. Kana who's getting absolutely shredded. Johnny trying to lead the way. Taiko, drums, barrels are there, and the kill on the Kana finally rolls through. Now, the opening, the slow, Julio with the ult back up, spreads that all around, and they are chasing down into the tier 2. No regard for their own lives because they're going to find even more in-kills. Rapio has lost his, but it is 3 already gone on the Gladiators, a 4th with Jake disappearing. Johnny barely manages to survive one more time, but Kyrmi in mid has to run as his team dies around him.
The Gilded Gladiators have enforced this scrappy pace, but Hex Mambo have met them everywhere on the map, just fighting back and forth all the way. One fight goes the Gladiators, they overstay, Hex Mambo shows up, they win the fight. Maybe it's their turn to overstay now. Towers are a zero-sum game though, Gore, so 1 HP on a tier 1 and tier 2 for the Gilded Gladiators means no global gold over to Hex Mambo, keeping this game relatively even. Experience gold largely equalized across the board, maybe slight advantages here or there. Rapio's 2 levels going to be pretty important, especially if he decides to go for that alternate timeline. He's been going towards it pretty consistently on this pick. That'll allow him to play hyper-aggressive. We've seen Rapio a little bit trepidatious with a Thunder Crash. I'm thinking we're going to see some aggressive leaps the second that starter's upgraded.
Now the setup is there. Level 20 reached first for 3 members. About to be 4 if Spudio can tick over soon. Hex Mambo with a pretty massive lead. He's got 1,200 experience to burn through, though, so it might take a little while. The biggest thing that I'm noticing, Mifflin, and it's something that is similar to last game, and you had just touched on it, but like seeing, you know, alternate timeline getting picked up, seeing the fact that you've got these upgraded starters, you're getting these power spikes. Hex Mambo is just... They were behind in gold. They're still behind in gold, actually. And yet it feels like they are dictating, or at least matching, as you had called it, the pace of the game the Gladiators want to set up. Now we're waiting for a Fire Giant. Maybe it's going to be the Pyromancer, but this next big fight is going to be a really, really important one.
Yeah, the timing of the engagement has really favored the Gilded Gladiators. Now Hex Mambo, having bided their time, should be able to, given the opportunity to find a pick, actually look towards one of those neutral objectives themselves. Maybe you could start it on this right-hand side. Kana pretty far forward, but with so many members of the Gilded Gladiators spotted out by Cozyx there, you got to be concerned about that counter rotation. Locks eyes with awesome Jake. Pluck no good. Any bit of poke now would be massive. If you can send Cozyx back to base, force him to ult out of base, just remove that huge team fight presence, would be big. I think Cozyx as well maybe would benefit from a little bit more CDR and build. We've seen a lot of these initiations from Jake. He's got massive CDR stack up. A little bit more from Cozyx, get some of those taunts rolling. Should be able to facilitate Johnny a bit better.
You've got a little time. 24 minutes in. As mentioned, it's about 1,100 gold for the Gladiators. Pyromancer back on the board. Gonna have a Primal Fury relatively soon. Ward game gonna be important. You can see some deep ones from Hex Mambo, but a lot in the inventory for everybody involved. And it is the right side map focus that is gonna be massive. 3-man stack from the Gladiators in mid. Jungle stack from Hex Mambo, and a lot around Cozyx. You had kind of mentioned, poking him out, forcing him to use the ult. I think the other half of that is something that really needs to be pointed out as well, right? Kyrmi, who's had his beads forced almost just on cooldown, not quite, by Cozyx, who's just going in for a dash taunt. Very standard dash taunt at that. And that's going to be Hex Mambo who move forward. Start up the Pyromancer and see what they can do while they have a little bit of leeway. Cozyx goes in for the dash. They've got the burn onto Kana. While they chase this down, let's listen in.
Can we go on left? Can you me, Cos?
Yeah. I'm ulting Julio. I'm hitting Sobek. Sobek 1. Sobek's 1 HP.
Arthur no beats.
I'm kinda low here.
Sobek
1 HP. Just go Pyro.
Yeah, heal up.
Pyro and reset, I think. Maybe reset straight.
Sobek 1 HP. They get rid of Kana. Kyrmi, maybe going in a little too late. Low health bars on Hex Mambo. They have to play cautiously and carefully. Cozyx, ult used. So if he backs, it's going to be the old pathing all the way back. Instead, reset. 30 seconds without a solo laner. Beacon available. That one will spawn the Titans. But Mifflin, a little bit of a tug of war still, even though they got the kill, even though they have the advantage there. Haven't been able to capitalize on it just yet for Hex Mambo.
But I'm seeing a really concerning trend now, where Hex Mambo have one line of play available to them that the Gilded Gladiators can't match, and it's their ability to kill the front line. Pyromancer knocked down. Kyrmi, it's not a 1v1.
Yeah, Kyrmi in trouble. Shielding helps out a ton. Dzoni has to get out of there. Pyromancer, by the way, over to the Gladiators in the meantime. Julio tried to play spoiler, but unable to do so. Now Beacon started up. Teleport coming in from Kana, who has respawned and is back on the board. Kyrmi hasn't retreated yet, so does not have the health to play with his team. So once Dzoni joins in, or until Dzoni joins in, we got a 4v4 in mid. Runic Bomb picked up by Snoopy. It looks like the rest of the team's going to fall back. Some pings coming out, and if Dzoni can get in here, or if you get a good taunt like that, you pull someone in. Kana just absolutely decimated, slowed down Julio, going for a little more, gets the smackdown, laid down, puts Kana in the ground now, chasing off Snoopy on the right, and zoning for a lot. It's a split fight for Hex Mambo, but they got everything they need. The two side lanes just taken out.
Hex Mambo, just rinse, repeat. Let me find Kana. I'll hit him with the taunt. Yo, Rapio, you got your 2-1 up. I don't even need your ultimate. And that's 50% of his HP each time. Kana is not tanky enough to create space for the Gilded Gladiators, and Hex Mambo can deal with either of the frontliners. Even Jake now, I think, squishy enough that if both Rapio and Spudio are hitting him, I mean, they just knock him down.
Jake just trying to do whatever he can. Unable to do any of it. Now Kyrmi, Dzoni, 1v1. It's not going to be a 1v1 for long. Dzoni is just holding you here. Up onto the Powwow. Shots are good. Spudio gets the kill, and that is staggered out 50 seconds without Kyrmi. Kana coming back. Snoopy coming back, but it's going to be a perpetual 4v5, and if you're not careful on this defense, it'll just keep cycling. You got to play cautiously. And at this point, Mifflin 5 with Fire Giant. Hex Mambo, for the first time this game, actually have a gold lead. The kill leads have been in their favor, and they're going to keep it rolling forward. Jake is the next target. Jangaru as well on the chopping block. Looks like they'll fall back, but it is not slowing them down. Dzoni has to get out of there because his health bar's too low. Phoenix finally taken down. Hex Mambo, everyone sans Julio, decides to run down mid. They're setting up a small ambush. Cozyx even coming in. It's not going to make a huge difference. Gladiators, they lose the Phoenix, they hold on to their lives.
It's just a massive damage diff. That's really all it is. ADC and mid are getting circles ran around them in the damage department for the Gilded Gladiators. Hex Mambo, every single time a frontliner is in front of them, they are chunked down. Whereas Julio, he's leaping into Phoenixes. He's leaping into the backline, essentially 1v4 for at least 3 or 4 seconds, and it's not a concern for him. They haven't... The Gilded Gladiators, that is, elected to go for a Sunder or an Ankh or anything like that, so the shielding from Julio is finding immense value. I'm scanning the builds. I'm not exactly seeing an erosion either, so Nike's just got 2 HP bars in every single one of these fights, and it seems like Kana can't even buy one.
Yeah, unfortunate for Kana. 0-6-0. I mean, your team, admittedly, they haven't been able to put up 11 out of 11 affected kills for Kyrmi, but it has 0 kills, 0 assists. And you've got to be feeling it. Every zone that he's tried, every attempt he's tried to lead his team into Hex Mambo has been met with Spudio and Rapio going, cool, bet, and then just throwing everything
Finally, an easy target. Yo, Cozyx, you got taunt. I don't feel like aiming anymore. And it's just going to continue to work. Mid Phoenix off the board. Minion wave already starting to leak forward. Julio in the front line, and he's not concerned about it. Jay could land the pluck on Julio, and I think he just walks out or serves up the Gilded Gladiators.
Well, best news for the Gladiators. The Titans are about to start marching, and they're going to be on right. Oh my god, Kana's just deleted. Kyrmi gonna be taken down. He barely makes it back to the Phoenix line, but it's not going to matter. The chase is forward with the Titan. It started to move, so you're going to have to kill it twice here. Once to reset and once to get the job done, but you've got the deicide. You've ended the Gladiators season, and if you are Hex Mambo, you're going to march into the Titan room, and you're going to send yourselves to Worlds.
7 times in a row. It happens to Kana, and he never learns his lesson. Again, walks up to the Phoenix line, taunt dead before the taunt ends. Did he build defense? You could have fooled me.
Honestly, I was trying to mention the Titans leaving. It didn't even have time to take a few steps
they killed
before
them both.
Kana was dead. They killed it twice. They killed them all. Man, Hex Mambo. Miv, you got to talk about like the energy that this team came out with. In fact, the pace, that wasn't even their pace of game. They met what the Gladiators were pushing and dealt with it in kind and then some.
And in the comms, it was just so collected from Hex Mambo. Yeah, this guy's low HP, you know, getting that tower, how long on CC. And there was no sense of urgency because really, were they ever under threat? Even when the Gilded Gladiators had the lead, and they had the lead for a significant portion of that game, it always felt like they were on the back foot in the team fight.
The Gladiators, a lot of that game, if they don't get the pyros and furies that they pick up throughout it, we're talking about a repeat of game 2, right? Like
so
10,000 plus gold lead for Hex Mambo. Instead, they hold on, right? They find those small objectives, but the kill lead, I mean, they were up 1,000 gold, almost all neutral objectives, but down half the kills that Hex Mambo had put up. It is just insane what this team was able to do. And it goes to show how strong the European SCC is, because now both of those teams are going to be going to the SMITE World Championship. We've got 3 out of 4. Hex Mambo stamps their tickets to Arlington, and I'm sure that everyone's excited to see what they're going to do on the stage. But that's it for myself and Myth. We'll go over to the desk, and they can break that set down.
2 years in a row, we're going to see the Hex Mambo name at the SMITE World Championships, and 2 years in a row, we're seeing 2 SCC teams there now with Hex Mambo punching their ticket to the SWC. Well, 2 years for EU SCC, because that's the only, there's only 2 EU teams that are here, but still potential for more. We'll talk a little bit about more of that. Let's talk about this game here, though, because this was a scrappy game from minute 1 of this one. Gilded Gladiators, Kyrmi on this Lancelot, running down the enemy team, and we had, what was it, 7, 8 people in dual lane for a very early fight at one point, and I think for at least what I could, from what I'm gathering in this one, it felt like as long as Jangaru was alive, Jangaru can get to these team fights, keep him alive, he's doing a boatload of damage the entire time. You look at the Phoenix defense in mid, Jangaru, if he's able to step one step further forward, one more ability cast, we could be looking at another maybe 5 minutes or so of play. But because this Hex Mambo team was able to get to Jangaru, able to kill Kana before Kana could even get anything going in the game, it made their sieges and it made their team fights just that much easier.
Yeah, and Miv talks about like the strength of Athena, where it's really just dash taunt, kill who's ever getting taunted. And it seems like they were just doing the same exact thing over and over. But to me, in this third game, the players that really stuck out to me were Rapio and Julio. Julio on this Nike was providing so much space for the rest of his team that it was basically free casting for Spudio, Rapio, and Cozy was just able to find taunts everywhere. And then on the other side of it, Rapio was just able to hit his abilities, taunt when he needed to, fear when he needed to, and able to just provide even more space and more damage for the rest of his team. And if this is the Mambo that we see at Worlds, where all 5 of the players are playing well together and it's not just the Johnny show, this is a terrifying team to play against.
I think even this fight here on his tier 2 tower a little bit earlier goes so back and forth. There's so many moments of potential turnaround and comeback potential for the Gilded Gladiators, but because they were behind at this point, they weren't even really behind as far as like gold was concerned. The kills were kind of the big difference here. The Hex Mambo has double their kills at this point. But I think it's that level of confidence, and as you say, all 5 players firing on the same level at that point in the game, which is what allows Hex Mambo to be able to make these kinds of confident plays. And I'm just going to say it. We saw our band the entire weekend. We see her twice yesterday. I don't want to ever see Athena again. I say, okay, we're coming to the stage. Surely nobody is allowed to get Athena. And Hex Mambo get it on match point to go to the SWC. It is criminal what this god is able to do and transform for a team.
Yeah, and Myth talks about it all the time. It's just the simplicity that this character provides. Follow up on her dash taunt. The game is easy to play. The mobility she provides for herself and the survivability for her allies is just through the roof. And when you even compare what they got in return for the Athena, Athena's a fantastic god, but they got a Baba, they got a Sobek, they got a Hachiman, they got a bunch of valuable characters, and Athena was still just better.
When you put up 37,000 damage as a mid laner as well, backed up to that Athena, it kind of makes that Athena look really good.
Yep.
I've been loving what we've been seeing out of Rapio. And again, remember Rapio coming into this, into this season, this phase, wasn't even a mid laner. He made a role swap to jump over into this mid team and has looked so strong doing so. The Hex Mambo, your second team from the EUSCC to qualify to the SMITE World Championships. They get to go back to back under the franchise, and we've got the whole team standing by for our interview.
That's right. I've got Hex Mambo here, and guys, it was a fantastic set, a 3-0 victory. Julio, yesterday you came in. I asked how you were going to prepare for a lot of those sets, and you just said we're just going to play our own game. You do that today. You're going to Worlds. How's it feel?
I mean, should have been yesterday, but it feels happy to be here and to be at Worlds, but not as happy as it would have been yesterday. But it's good to lose yesterday, so we get like a reality check, and obviously I'd rather lose here than at Worlds, so it's fine.
You get to learn a little bit, right? And you're going to take that to the world stage. Congratulations, man. Rapio, you come in, you're a jungler for years and years and years. You swap over to mid, and now not only have you had a phenomenal performance, outperforming other mid laners who've been doing it for years, but also get to go to Worlds. How's it feel?
It feels really good. You know, as Philly said, I think we needed to lose yesterday. It kind of woke us all up a bit because we don't really scrim, we don't really prepare. We just kind of went on vibes, but yeah, it feels really good.
Well, maybe the vibes for the next few days are going to be like studying and stuff. I'm sure, like Davey, you're dressed up as a coach. We'll get to you later. Maybe you're gonna like hard in on this. Coming in, Silence. You finally get to make it here. You finally get to do too much. Cozyx. Man, I'm so bad with names today. I'm sorry. I'm gonna give you a hug. I'm so sorry. Cozyx, I just spent 3 games highlighting your name, and you were a big portion of that last game. You're finally going to Worlds, which is what I was trying to get to and why maybe I was messed up on the name. How does it feel?
It feels good. Like last year, we went there, but we didn't go there very far, so it's good to have another chance and like try and do better than we did just last year with Ravens. So excited, looking good.
You think you're going to get Athena again? Is anyone ever going to allow that again?
I mean, I didn't think I'd get it ever, not even like here, so and we did, so maybe we get it at Worlds again. Who knows?
Well, it looked fantastic. You played well. And I'll make sure that I cement your name in my brain because it's going to be coming up a whole lot. Now we get to move forward. Spudio, you play incredibly well. There are moments, actually in Game 2, we're talking like highlight level plays. You're going up into the snipes. It feels like Game 2 got out of hand. But like, how does it feel, especially for you to be able to kind of pick this up and finally go to the world stage, play in in front of such a big crowd?
Yeah, I mean, since I've never been before, it's good to make it. Hopefully we can do well.
Oh, just hopefully you can do well. I believe in you. I wanted some more confidence in the backbone. Johnny, man, you have been insane for years. You're going back to play on the world stage, but you have a performance today. Even the dodgy game, you stack up the assists instead of the kill count, but how does it feel?
I mean, it feels pretty good. Like, I've played so bad this lane. Like, even the games you won, I've played so bad, so it feels pretty good. Like, first 2 games, I'm pretty like happy with. Third game was like a bit, I could work on, but yeah, it feels good.
Yeah, it was going to be a difficult dodgy game for you nonetheless, but you still got the job done. You got out of so many fights. It was so ridiculous how many like one-hit kills you managed to avoid.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably like 6 or 7 times I literally saw 1 HP this set, so yeah, at least that fucking... my bad. Yeah. That went good for me, so yeah.
Well, hey, man, you get this win. It's 3-0. And Davey, I come over to you. Now, you've come in for a while competing against a lot of these guys. Now you're looking at going to the World Championship with them. I've definitely heard that there's been discussion over like drinks and stuff. It's been vibes. So is it going to be drinks and vibes going into Worlds, or is it going to be maybe a little more nose to the book?
You know, these guys had a coach previously, but I've just took over. We're a different team with me, we're a different animal. And that's why we qualified, and that's why we'll win next week at Worlds. So it's good. It's good to be there. But obviously, you have to get a couple bevs in. No problem there.
It's not a Worlds win if you don't get a couple bevs in the process, right?
Exactly, exactly.
That's the confidence that I was looking for. That's what I wanted to see. 3-0 victory for Hex Mambo. All of you are going to Worlds. Congratulations, guys, on the win one more time. And we'll go over to the desk, and they can close this out.
That's right, Hex Mambo, your third seed, or your third team, not third seed, your third team, your first seed EU-SEC team now making it to the SMITE World Championships. And one thing that I neglected to mention, I'll kind of talk about as we jump into the bracket here for really kind of breakdown. This is now the second year in a row that Cozyx has denied Kyrmi an opportunity at Worlds. Did it on the Ravens team last year when Kyrmi was on the Valkyries. Now does it once more here with Hex Mambo versus Gladiators. So it will be the Highland Ravens and Hex Mambo. One SPL, one SCC team to qualify to the SMITE World Championships out of Group A. And look at the path that Mambo took to do so. A 2-0 over the Gladiators to start the week. A 3-1 loss to the Highland Ravens, but now gets to join that Ravens team after their 3-0 over the Gladiators to make it to the World Championship stage. And that fully now notches out the entirety of Group A, their bracket, and who their teams are going to be going over to Worlds. So now we can jump over to Group B because we still have one more set to go. One more team to qualify. Solar Scarabs went on their war path this week already. 2-0 over the Kings, 3-1 over the Wardens. They're your first team of this group to qualify to Worlds. And now we have one more SCC versus SPL matchup to see if it will be the Camelot Kings or the Kowloon Wardens to qualify to the SMITE World Championships. If the Wardens make it, this will be our first year ever we've had 3 SCC teams make it to the world stage. Last year we had 2, which was already a first time on that, because before then, I believe it was Sanguine at the time who was that kind of SCC team that was the only time to be able to make it up to the World Championships themselves. So we could be making another historical moment here if the Kowloon Wardens win. But there's a lot of story and a lot of history with the Camelot Kings. You know, if they're able to make that there, feels great for them, get to try and defend their title once more at the world stage. If they don't make it, that's the first year without a Captain Twig there. That's the first year a back-to-back champion doesn't make a Worlds, and that's the first year that a team who has won a World Championships also doesn't make it. There's a lot riding on the line for the Camelot Kings team.
Yeah, and then on the opposite side, a lot riding for the Glads because this is a team that was the SCC 5 seed going into this tournament, and now they're on the one set away from making it to Worlds. So, I mean, a lot riding for both of these teams. It's really going to be a good set.
There's a lot of stories to tell with both of these two teams. The Kowloon Wardens and the Camelot Kings, your final qualifying match. One more best of 5 and one final team to send to Worlds. We'll find out who that's going to be right after this break.
Consequences of our greed, running back and forth, hating every word.